Sit back, relax, and enjoy the video, because a new world is waiting for you. My head throbbed with a relentless rhythm. It felt as if a raw wound had been gouged into my skull, the pain radiating through my entire being, threatening to split my consciousness in two. The rhythmic jostling suggested I was trapped in some form of conveyance. My body bounced and swayed with the carriage's movement, each impact sending fresh waves of agony through the injury. I sucked in several sharp breaths, trying to clinch down on the pain. I forced my eyes open, attempting to make sense of my surroundings. Rough, hollowed planks formed the walls around me. Beside me, several fair-haired, blue-eyed youths were slumped, eyes closed in rest, oblivious or indifferent to my awakening. No one seemed to spare me a glance. I realized I was lying on the floor, the cold seeping into my bones. My body, already battered, wouldn't last long against such a chill. Pneumonia, or worse, could easily take hold. I struggled to push myself upright. A sudden, blinding spike of pain lanced through my head, sharper than anything before. It wasn't just physical. A torrent of strange, alien memories flooded my mind, overwhelming my senses. My vision blurred, my eyes rolled back, and the world dissolved into black. "Hey, Alaric, wake up." A muffled voice cut through the haze. My eyes fluttered open, a strange sense of déjà vu washing over me. Is this reincarnation? I clearly remembered the searing flash of brilliant flames from the energy reactor's core, a silent testament to a project gone horribly, irreversibly wrong. Survival from such an explosion, without any form of shielding, was a statistical impossibility. Furthermore, on the technologically advanced planet I had once called home, such a crude, wooden carriage was nothing more than an ancient antique, a relic confined to museums. As the new memories settled into my fractured consciousness, a clearer picture of this body and its strange new world began to form. This was a realm steeped in a medieval aesthetic, yet subtly different, infused with the presence of a mysterious, potent force. My current vessel had belonged to a young man named Alaric Vance, the scion of a minor noble house. He had been tested and found to possess the innate gift to become a magus. His father, Baron Elias Vance, had leveraged his influence and resources to secure Alaric's entry as a magus apprentice. Currently, I was on a horse-drawn carriage, journeying toward the fabled Ethelgard Scholarium. I looked up to see who had spoken. It was a large, sturdy youth with thick eyebrows, large eyes, a tall, straight nose, and sparkling gold hair. Though his face still held the softness of youth, his physique was surprisingly well-muscled and undeniably manly. Seeing my eyes open, the boy laughed, a booming, good-natured sound. "Ha, Alaric, you're finally awake. Another few minutes, and you'd have missed dinner. You wouldn't want to starve, would you?" I lowered my gaze. A quick delve into the newly acquired memories confirmed his identity. "Thanks, Rory." The other youths accompanying me to the Ethelgard Scholarium had all tested positive for the gift of magus aptitude. Rory Blackwood, in particular, was the legitimate son of a powerful count, one of his favored offspring. His father had spared no expense, pulling numerous strings to ensure Rory's admission to the prestigious academy. "A count," I mused silently. My thoughts drifted to this body's father, Baron Elias Vance. His estates, in my previous life, would have been comparable to a small city, commanding thousands of soldiers. Here, noble rank was intrinsically linked to personal power and influence. If Rory's father was a count, his holdings likely spanned several cities, with an annual income measured in thousands of gold coins. It begged the question, if even a count had to exert such significant effort to send his son to a magus academy, what immense sacrifice or cunning had my own father, a mere baron, employed to secure my place? As I pondered, another sharp, phantom pain flared in my head, triggering a vivid memory fragment. A dimly lit room, ancient, musty shelves lining the walls, thick with the dust of ages. Under a flickering light, Elias Vance solemnly presented a ring to a younger Alaric. "My dear Alaric, this is the Vance family's heirloom treasure, a promise from a magus. My grandfather once aided an injured magus, who, in return, gifted him this ring, promising that if any of his descendants showed the gift of a magus, they could use this ring for free entry into any magus academy. Now, I entrust this to you, hoping you will become the pride of the Vance family, upholding our legacy." My eyes narrowed instinctively, and my right hand reflexively went to my chest. Beneath my clothes, I felt the familiar, solid weight, a metal ring. A sigh of relief escaped me. "Lucky, I'm not sure if those fools failed to recognize it as a treasure, or if some protective enchantment was at play. Either way, I'm fortunate it wasn't plundered. As a scientist from my former life, I found myself intensely curious about this mysterious strength, a primal urge to research and understand its fundamental nature. Moreover, I had no desire to be sent back home for losing such a critical proof of entry. Though I now inhabit this body and possess its memories, I am fundamentally different from the original Alaric. To family members who've spent years with him, the distinction would be glaring. If they were to suspect demonic possession and call upon one of those mysterious magi to investigate, my carefully constructed facade could crumble. However, if I could enter the Ethelgard Scholarium, I would likely be absent from home for several years. By then, any alterations in my behavior could be dismissed as the natural eccentricities of a budding magus. Indeed, in such a world, it might be stranger not to be a little peculiar. Acting precisely as the original Alaric once did would surely draw more suspicion. Lost in thought, a pair of strong hands suddenly gripped my arms, helping me to my feet. "What's on your mind?" Rory asked, his brow furrowed. Nothing. I quickly shook my head, immediately regretting the motion as a fresh wave of pain coursed through my still injured head. I spun, fixing Rory with a stare that made him flinch, as if he'd been impaled by the gaze of a venomous serpent. "Dearest Rory," I drawled, forcing a wry smile. "Why did you neglect to wake me, allowing me to lie on that cold floor for so long?" "Haha, I saw you sleeping so peacefully, thought you enjoyed it down there." Rory scratched his head, feigning abashment, but a sly glint danced in his golden eyes. Under my unwavering glare, he finally raised his hands in surrender. All right. Who asked you to offend my goddess? Offending her is one thing, and as brothers, I'm not so petty. But the entire carriage treats you like an enemy now, and I'd rather not be isolated as well." "Offend? Goddess?" I scratched my head, then the memory clicked, the reason for the initial beating. It concerned a girl named Princess Lyra. Though only 15, her form was already surprisingly developed, and her large, watery eyes had apparently been a huge draw for the original, lecherous Alaric. That Alaric was no gentleman. He had lost his virginity at 12 and, through seduction or coercion, had bedded over 100 women. He was known as the scourge of his father's estates. As I finished sifting through those memories, I rolled my eyes in disdain. No wonder this body is so weak and frail. It wasn't just the injuries. It was clear the original Alaric, accustomed to wreaking havoc within his own territory, had utterly failed to control himself upon encountering Princess Lyra. At first, his advances were merely crude flirtation, but soon, he escalated to violent attempts. The memories confirmed it. The original Alaric was an absolute idiot. Princess Lyra is a royal scion, and he intended to assault her? Was his brain stuffed with straw? Good grief. What followed was inevitable. Alaric was savagely beaten by Princess Lyra's royal wardens, a beating so severe it killed him, paving the way for my unexpected arrival. Haha, this Princess Lyra. It seems she's not as innocent as I initially thought. How delightfully scheming. I allowed myself a cold, internal chuckle. No matter. Since I've taken over your body, Alaric, if the opportunity arises, I will settle your score. For now, I am Alaric Vance. I swore this oath in the silence of my mind. In Alaric's memories, there were no signs of Asian people, nor any mention of a land called China. In this new, Western-styled world, using my original name would be an unnecessary risk. I glanced around the carriage interior. It was empty. Rory had indeed come to retrieve me. Regardless, I still owe you thanks. Rory, do you have any medicine? I stood and stretched. Though aches persisted in several places, my movement was unimpeded, and the wound on the back of my head had already scabbed over. Haha, I knew you'd need this. Rory laughed, tossing a small vial. This is a secret remedy from my family. I hear it's typically used during ironclad guard training. Extremely effective for bodily injuries. As Rory spoke, he glanced around furtively. All right, dinner's about to start. I'm heading there first. You should apply the medicine quickly and hurry over. And remember, don't tell anyone about our friendship. He was gone like a gust of wind before I could reply. Watching Rory's figure vanish, I couldn't help but massage my temples. It appeared the original Alaric had truly stirred a hornet's nest. Was it such a monumental offense? In Alaric's memories, it seems sexual relations in this world are rather open. There was nothing to be done about it now. I quickly stripped off my clothes and rubbed the pungent medicine over my various injuries. That damned Rory. Couldn't he have at least helped me apply this before running off? I hissed through clenched teeth, the cooling sensation of the salve immediately following the sharp sting. The medicine was remarkably potent. As soon as it touched my skin, a wave of cool relief washed over me, and the pain rapidly subsided. After dealing with my wounds, I redressed and pushed open the carriage door. A gentle breeze kissed my face. The sun, a fiery orb on the horizon, painted the entire landscape in hues of gold and amber. Regardless of the circumstances, it feels truly good to be alive. My eyes grew moist as I muttered the thought aloud. I scanned my surroundings. Several large carriages had been arranged in a protective circle, forming a crude, temporary campsite. A large bonfire crackled merrily in the center. Numerous youths sat around the fire, resting on woven mats, laughing and conversing as they ate bread. I walked towards a long table laden with breads and juices. According to my inherited memories, this was the distribution point for provisions. As I approached, I noticed a small queue. Upon seeing me, several of the apprentices shot me glances laced with undisguised disdain. Though I considered myself thick-skinned, the collective animosity was still somewhat jarring. Still, I wouldn't leave. Survival demanded sustenance. "Hurry up," a hoarse voice barked from behind the table. It was Jonas Scarbelly, the grim-faced food distributor whose deep scar seemed to deepen with his impatience. "So, sorry, Mistress Isolde," a freckled boy squeaked, grabbing his meager share before scrambling away. A warning klaxon blared directly into my mind. "Danger alert! Danger alert!" My focus sharpened. "You are extremely close to the source of danger. Recommendation: the host should move at least 1,000 meters away." My eyes widened. That mechanical voice. Isn't this my old assistant cognitive core from my previous life? How did it reincarnate with me? This is unscientific. I found it almost impossible to believe. I issued a silent command within my mind. "Cognitive core, scan my mind and search for locations of assistant systems." A moment later, the cognitive core's neutral voice responded. "Scan complete. No strange existences were found in the host's mind. Now scan my entire body and display my body's stats." Immediately, another synthesized voice confirmed. "Scan complete. Kalen Thorne, Alaric Vance. Strength, 0.4. Agility, 0.5. Vitality, 0.4. Status, bleeding from back of the head, many injuries to the soft tissues. No cognitive core present in the host's body." A translucent 3D hologram shimmered before my eyes, depicting my own body with the numerical stats displayed alongside. No cognitive core? I know the cognitive core is equivalent to a material substance. How did it follow my soul through reincarnation? I pondered the implications. It seems that during the explosion or my reincarnation, some profound abnormality occurred, and the cognitive core's functions fused with my soul. If I were still in my previous world, this would be a monumental discovery. It not only validates the existence of the soul, but also suggests that physical matter and the soul can potentially transform each other. This would surely send that cadre of old men in the Grand Scientific Consortium into a frenzy. What a pity, I'll never see them again. This type of cognitive core was an indispensable tool for scientists in my former world. Due to strict regulations concerning human rights and conscious thought, this technology possessed no independent intelligence. It served two primary functions: to analyze and to store information. Its analytical capabilities were entirely dependent on the host's commands. It gathered data samples and derived deductions based on complex simulations. Its storage abilities were even simpler, yet astonishingly vast. It could record data from everything the host's five senses experienced. Based on calculations from my previous world, a cognitive core of this caliber had enough storage capacity to record over 10,000 years worth of events. Why did the cognitive core and the soul fuse together? I'll table that question for later, when I possess the means and expertise to truly investigate it. But with this cognitive core, I have a significant advantage in this new world. The corners of my mouth twitched upwards, forming a genuine, if slightly chilling, smile. I knew that in this medieval era, possessing the crystallization of future technology would undoubtedly make my path extraordinary. But this Alaric's physique is truly... I trailed off, speechless, staring at the pathetic stats displayed before me. The stats displayed were based on each aspect of an adult's physiology as a standard. Theoretically, the average adult's displayed stats would all be around 1. Although this Alaric was only 13 to 14 years old, his stats were still too low. That's not right. It's possible that the bodies of the people in this world are generally weaker. Cognitive core, scan the bodies of the people around me and display their stats. A clear chime echoed in my mind. Task established. Beginning the collection of stats. In almost an instant, 3D holograms of the surrounding people's bodies appeared in front of me, displaying their stats. Name, unknown. Gender, male. Strength, 0.9. Agility, 1.1. Vitality, 0.8. Name, unknown. Gender, male. Strength, 1.2. Agility, 0.8. Vitality, 1.0. Name, unknown. Gender, female. Strength, 0.8. Agility, 1.2. Vitality, 0.7. Well then, it looks like the bodies of these people are stronger than those from my previous world. This Alaric is even inferior to a girl. I'm starting to feel embarrassed for him. I scanned my surroundings. The people were all youths around my age. There was a seemingly very delicate and frail girl whose stats were significantly better than Alaric's, causing me to feel utter despair on his behalf. It looks like this Alaric was a useless leech, an excessively lecherous piece of trash with no control. Suddenly, a stark red alert flashed across my internal display. Name, unknown. Gender, male. Strength, 3.3. Agility, 2.5. Vitality, 3.2. Alert. Alert. This life form is excessively dangerous. Recommendation. Host should immediately move at least 1,000 meters away. The red warning continued to flash 3 times in succession. This caused Kalen Thorne to fall into a state of shock. Average stats of 3.0. After I scanned the information several times to double-check that the cognitive core hadn't made a mistake, I was left completely speechless. Even the world champion doesn't have these kinds of stats. In the previous world, this person could easily dress up as Superman. As a scientist, I understood well that a stat of 3.2 meant the person's fighting capabilities, viral resistance, and body recovery speed were all 3 times greater than a normal person's. The various stats displayed being 3-fold greater than a typical person's wasn't as simple as just adding numbers together. What kind of concept was this? It meant that this person could defeat dozens of people empty-handed, and even get past a group attack by 100 people. In my previous world, he really would have counted as a Superman. I'm afraid that a person with these kinds of stats could only be created by genetically modifying their biochemistry in a lab. Moreover, only the minimum would be reached. This world is indeed not a simple one. I thought to myself as I looked at the person possessing these terrifying stats once again. It was Jonas Scarbelly, the black-clothed man responsible for handing out food. He looked like he was middle-aged, and he had a deep scar on his face that stretched from his forehead to his lip. It pretty much split his entire face in half, and looked extremely fierce. The freckled boy from before, Finian, was completely frightened by this person. This is the Ethelgard Scholarium's servant responsible for receiving us. It said that he's not a magus, yet he's already so frightening. What would a real magus be like then? I suddenly discovered that a strong interest and curiosity about the profession of a magus had arisen inside me. It was to the point where I was itching to go to the Scholarium now and investigate everything. The line was short, and it was soon my turn. After Jonas Scarbelly gave me a piece of white bread and some juice, he wordlessly waved me away with an impatient expression on his face. If it were the previous Alaric, even if he didn't dare to drag this guy out and lash him a few times because it wasn't his home, his expression still would have turned quite ugly and would probably have ranted at the man a bit. But the current Kalen Thorne was naturally not that stupid. Following Alaric's memories, I formally bowed and said, "Thank you, mister." Jonas Scarbelly remained expressionless as he watched me turn to leave. I didn't think that Alaric would really seem like a noble after bowing. The 2 youths behind me couldn't help but secretly whisper to each other. "Hurry up and move forwards," Jonas Scarbelly shouted, suddenly blasting the 2's eardrums. The great sound scared one of the youths so badly that he fell down onto the ground. I ignored the discussion behind me as I surveyed the area with a cold gaze. I then bitterly smiled. Great. I'm really an unwelcome person. When I looked at Rory Blackwood, he also hurriedly turned his head away. His hands made a secret gesture behind his back. Fine. Since you gave me the medicine, I won't expose you." I sighed, then found a relatively remote place. Without caring whether or not the ground was carpeted, I sat down and began to eat heartily. This plain white bread isn't as good as that from the previous world, but according to Alaric's memories, This is already considered a food that one can only get during celebrations. I thought as I ate. Based on Alaric's memories, the production capabilities in this world were quite low. White bread was an aristocrat's food. Normal, minor nobles could only enjoy it during celebrations of major holidays. To typical peasants, who only had hard, nutritionless black bread to eat, this was a supreme delicacy. When I thought of the black bread as hard as rocks from Alaric's memories, I sighed. It's a good thing that I'm quite fortunate. Regardless of whether I'm a noble or a magus, I'm still in the upper levels of this world, so I won't need to suffer. I ravenously wolfed down the bread and down the juice in one gulp as well. I then wiped my mouth in satisfaction and returned to the carriage. Based on the experience in Alaric's memory, noble youths would set up tents in camp and rest for the entire night before moving again. However, it was clear that nobody would invite Alaric to join them. He didn't have a tent himself, so he could only sleep on the cold and hard carriage. When I looked just now, there seemed to be 50-some apprentices, 25 black robes, and 3 of the highest status white robes. When I thought of the scene just now when I had been noticed from a distance, the hairs on my body rose. Added on to that, the cognitive core had chimed with warnings of an unknown radiation source, then declared, received disturbance from unknown force field, impossible to scan. This formed a shadow in my heart. It looks like even with the cognitive core, I'm still extremely weak in this world, but it's precisely due to this reason that I desire to obtain the strength of a magus. My eyes seem to light up in flames. It's best if I sleep earlier. I still need to hurry on with the journey tomorrow. I took off my jacket and laid it on the ground to make my sleeping more comfortable. So far, since this journey was started, it's already been over 3 months. We've passed through a few dozen kingdoms, yet we still haven't reached our objective. These ancient transportation conditions are really. I closed my eyes and fell into a daze. After some time, the carriage door opened with a bang. I suddenly sat up. My nose was then filled with the scent of a rose. It was sweet and aromatic, extremely pleasing to the nose. It also made my body throb, invoking Alaric's memories. Allah, Alaric, are you well? A pleasant, female voice said. Princess Lyra, please come in. I moved my body. The fragrant scent in the carriage suddenly grew more powerful as a beautiful young girl entered. She had fair skin and wore red, tight-fitting clothes that accentuated her voluptuous curves. What was even harder for me to forget was this girl's platinum hair and eyes like crimson jewels. Combined with her beautiful face, it presented an exotic charm. This was the girl that caused Alaric to be beaten up and even lose his life, Princess Lyra. May I ask if you have anything to ask me? Although this girl had developed quite well and seemed extremely enticing to the original Alaric, having come from a different world and experiencing an endless barrage of beauties, this girl was only somewhat good-looking to Kaelin Thorne. My attitude was extremely cold and indifferent. It was clear that this manner somewhat shocked the young girl, as the words she was about to say didn't leave her mouth. After a long period of silence, she pulled out a small, glass bottle and placed it in my hands. This is a medicine for injuries. If you apply it to your body, it'll help you. I'm sorry. The girl bowed, revealing the ample, snow-white curves of her chest, causing a faint physiological reaction in me. After she made her apology, the girl ran off like a startled little fawn, leaving her wonderful scent behind. Looking at the disappearing red figure in the distance, I was rather puzzled. It was clearly Alaric who had assaulted you. Why did you come to apologize? Is there something wrong with your brain? I touched the bottle in my hand, thinking to myself, did I misjudge her earlier? Could this Princess Lyra be a kind-hearted girl? I studied the glass bottle in my hand curiously. It seems like they already have the technology to produce glass. Although, judging by the workmanship, it still seems rather rough. It is quite decent already. As I opened the bottle cap, a medicinal fragrance wafted out. Following the habits of my past life, I immediately said, Cognitive Core, scan this medicine and analyze its components. A quick chime from the Cognitive Core. Task established. Begin scan. A moment later, discovered unknown components. Starting simulated experiments. Then, with unnerving speed, experiments complete. Unknown medicine has effect of strong itching. Duration, 7 days. Looking at the results of the experiment, I was struck speechless. I retract my previous statement. That girl is rather black-heart. However, I soon had the feeling of an adult being pranked by a naughty kid. She is still a child after all. She can't use truly malicious tricks. Perhaps if it were a few years ahead, the bottle would be full of deadly poison instead. Looking at the bottle in hand, I thought about it and decided to keep it. I'll just keep this for now. Who knows when it might come into handy in the future. After Princess Lyra left, no one else came to disturb me. I lay back down. Though it seemed as if I were sleeping, my mind was actually working in overdrive as I thought through things. It seems like there shouldn't be any problems or risks of being found out by going to a Magus Scholarium. Those white-robed figures should be magi, and I have walked by them a few times without drawing attention. It seems like they are also unable to detect anything strange about me. This means entering a Magus Scholarium should be relatively easy in that sense. However, according to rumors, magi are all secretive and cruel, at least according to what Baron Elias Vance heard. It also seems that in the Scholariums, there is extremely fierce competition amongst the acolytes of the same level despite it being against the rules to kill one another. I need to at least have some form of self-protection. As I thought about that, I once again touched the Vance family heirloom ring, which was hung around my neck, and held it in my hands. The ring was jet black and nondescript. Within the inner ring, there was a small V inscribed, along with elaborate inscriptions around it. With this era's rudimentary technology, to be able to inscribe such a complicated pattern onto the inner ring is incomprehensible. However, regardless of the issue, as long as it has to do with the mysterious magi, it shouldn't be surprising at all. I muttered to myself and issued another command. Cognitive core. Scan the ring in my hands. A sharp signal from the cognitive core. Task established. Begin scan. A beat of silence. Then, discovered unknown metallic components. Comparing to databanks. Insufficient data. Unable to analyze. As I thought, with the cognitive core's current level, it is still inadequate to analyze something that a Magus left behind. I sighed and stored the ring. How can I increase my power? This body of mine is truly too weak. It cannot even compare to those of the same age. That will not do. If it were my past life, I could still undergo genetic modification. Alas, there is no such option here. Perhaps I should explore Alaric's memory once again, and see if there are any methods. I thought to myself once again, then found a comfortable spot to lie down, thinking out aloud in my mind. Cognitive core? Scan the entirety of Alaric's memory and arrange it. The cognitive core acknowledged. Task established. Starting arrangement. In Kalen Thorne's former world, the world of science had always been of the opinion that the majority of the human brain's power was not being harnessed. Amongst that power was the ability to access every memory since birth. Some memories, even if the person in question could not recall them, were actually still stored somewhere in the brain. Now, as I gave the command, memories of Alaric's entire life, from birth to his being chosen as a Magus acolyte and going on this journey, were all displayed in front of my eyes with the cognitive core's assistance. Every single memory, down to what was eaten in every meal, as well as their tastes, were retained and displayed in my mind. Such a large mass of memory was just too confusing and was also full of useless information. In the past, I had only taken what I had urgently needed and ignored the rest. At this point, with the help of the cognitive core, I was arranging and sorting everything out. A soft ding from the cognitive core announced, data sorting has been completed. Create a new file named Alaric Vance and save it. I gave a new order. The cognitive core confirmed. File created, Alaric Vance. New task, search the file for all possible methods for the host to improve strength quickly. Another chime. Task established. Begin search. In front of me, innumerable amounts of data flashed past, seemingly forming a beautiful picture. Almost immediately, search complete. Search results, 453 methods. So many. I paused a while as I thought. Remove those with estimated success rate of 50% and below for the host. Also, add another requirement. The host must be able to carry out the strengthening method now. Begin filter. The cognitive core swiftly responded. Filter complete. Remaining methods, 2. Show them to me. The results flashed. Method 1, become a Magus. Method 2, begin Ironclad Guard training. Oh, Method 1 is not realistic at the moment. At least, not until I reach the Ethelgard Scholarium. Otherwise, how could I possibly learn how to become a Magus? As for the Ironclad Guard training, I wonder what that is. As I muttered to myself, a new task was immediately assigned. Cognitive core. Assemble all memory regarding ironclad guard training. Once it has been arranged properly, send it into my memory. After the data was directly transmitted to my brain, I began to understand what an ironclad guard truly was. In this world, several mysterious powers existed, but the ones commoners had the most experience with were undoubtedly the ironclad guards. Ironclad guards were warriors who had undergone rigorous training, stimulating their inner life energy. Their physical attributes far surpassed those of a normal human. To become a magus required a specific, rare gift among tens of thousands. Perhaps not even one person would possess it. However, being an ironclad guard was different. As long as one was willing to put in the effort, anyone could aspire to become one. Not only did these ironclad guards possess physical attributes several times that of normal humans, but they were also well-versed in various weaponry and the killing arts. Some even commanded special secret skills that could unleash a sudden burst of power. The kingdoms of the common world, alongside the nobility, were generally composed of ironclad guards. The Vance family, which I was now a part of, was also an ironclad guard family. The family's original founder had fought in wars alongside the king, accumulating significant meritorious service. For this, they had been awarded the Baron title and corresponding baronial estates. After an overall sweep of the information, a scene from the past surfaced in my mind. It was a small jungle within the baronial estates. Baron Elias Vance stood in a warrior's outfit, a stern expression on his face. He addressed the young Alaric. "Today, I will teach you the secret skill passed down through the Vance family, the Crimson Cross discipline and its accompanying breathing techniques. You must remember that you can never teach this to anyone outside our family." In that moment, Baron Elias's face held an unprecedented severity. Alas, Alaric had been but a child then and had obviously not given the matter much thought, eventually forgetting it. Baron Elias had tried to compel him into training a few times, but Alaric was so averse to suffering and fatigue that, after a while, even Baron Elias had given up. Sigh, an overly compassionate father leads to a failure of a son. Only now did I realize how the previous body's owner had become such a spoiled brat. Although young Alaric had only known how to act like a playboy and had totally forgotten everything about the ironclad guard training for the family secret skill, I managed to recover all of it with the help of the cognitive core. Crimson Cross basic sword style, horizontal slash, vertical slash, piercing attack, slanted slash. Footwork, advance, retreat, dodge. There was also the accompanying breathing technique. All of it appeared clearly in my mind, along with the experience that Baron Elias had imparted. The memory finally ended with Baron Elias emitting white mist from his mouth as he manipulated his crimson crossblade, splitting a rock as large as a millstone in two with a single cleave. An ironclad guard is considered the lowest mysterious power, yet they are already so strong. What kind of existence are those magi who are high above ironclad guards? My eyes burned with a fiery passion. Sigh, I have to take things step by step. I had better concentrate on this ironclad guard breathing technique first. Anyway, ironclad guard training doesn't clash with magus training. At least I'll have some measure of self-defense for now. After a detailed analysis, I discovered that this world's so-called breathing technique was very similar to the internal qigong of my previous world, though far cruder. It was heavily dependent on external stimulations to activate the inner life energy. According to rumors, if a warrior goes through ironclad guard training and is still unable to activate their inner life energy, the only option is to enter the battlefield and endure fierce and bloody battles. This is the only other way to trigger their inner life energy and become an ironclad guard. Cognitive core, transfer the knowledge of the Crimson Cross discipline to me. I issued my next order. Soon after, a large amount of knowledge regarding the technique was transferred directly into my mind. It was etched deeply into my brain, as if I had been training in it since I was young. Isolate the Crimson Cross discipline and save it into a new file, with the file name Crimson Cross Discipline Basics. A system notification chimed in my head. Saved new file, Crimson Cross Discipline Basics. As the cognitive core notification sounded in my mind, my lips curved into a smile. With the cognitive core's help, my learning speed was unbelievably quick, fast enough to make any so-called genius commit suicide from shame. Now that I have all the memories of it, it is just a matter of finding a Crimson Crossblade and getting some actual practice. If all goes well, I have confidence in mastering it within 10 days, bringing myself to Baron Elias's level. All these sword techniques are merely killing arts. The most important thing for ironclad guard training is the accompanying breathing technique. I muttered to myself. Cognitive core. According to my statistics, simulate and create the best model for me to start training the breathing technique. A mechanical voice sounded out. Beep. Task established. Host human model established. Beginning simulation. As the mechanical voice sounded out, a 3D model of a human figure appeared in front of my eyes. It was transparent and shimmering in blue light, appearing exactly the same as me. A 13-year-old youth with Western features, brown hair, big eyes, and bushy eyebrows. The 3D figure repeatedly began training the breathing technique, constantly adjusting the frequency, rate, and magnitude. Slowly, a red line could be seen moving around in the 3D figure's body. After a few minutes, the simulation ended, and the cognitive core's mechanical voice sounded out once more. Simulation ended. Crimson cross accompanying breathing technique. Time required for 1 revolution, 30 minutes. 10 revolutions will improve the host's body by 0.05 strength, 0.06 agility, and 0.03 vitality. The improvements will gradually lessen as the stats improve. Warning: if the host undergoes long-term training of this technique, it will result in residual damage to the host body. Recommendation to think twice before starting. Phew. This is indeed an impressive ironclad guard training technique. As long as I persevere, I will quickly be able to improve my power. Alas, I wonder if there is any way to remove the effect of the residual damage. I said with a faint smile. At this time, the cognitive core's voice suddenly sounded out. Do you wish to optimize the breathing technique? Y/N. The cognitive core actually has such abilities? A joyful look rose on my face. I never thought that this cognitive core's analyzing abilities could also work on the ironclad guard breathing technique in this world. I exclaimed, and then commanded, optimize immediately. A system prompt reported, optimization initiating, estimated time, 125 minutes. Yep, 125 minutes, which is over 2 hours. I can afford to wait. I felt at ease. After waiting rather impatiently, the 2 hours finally passed. The cognitive core's voice sounded out right on time. The optimization for the breathing technique has been completed. Time taken for breathing technique, 5 minutes 23 seconds, and the effects have all risen by 5%. The side effects of the injuries have vanished. Very good. This result made me very satisfied. If the effect was a 5% increase each time, then dozens and even hundreds of times would result in huge differences. Rumor has it that the Crimson Cross discipline and the breathing technique were obtained by the founder after dozens of bloody battles, where he finally acquired it from the corpse of an ironclad guard. Among the many ironclad guard families, it is considered to be of upper middle grade. After the optimization of the breathing technique done by the cognitive core, I'm afraid it might even be comparable to the secret scroll techniques of those smaller kingdoms. I quietly pondered, then immediately said in an impatient manner, Cognitive core, transfer the optimized breathing technique to the memory zone. The cognitive core duly carried out its orders and brought large amounts of images depicting the breathing technique back to my mind. After a few minutes of transfer, I gently rubbed my head. I feel a little giddy, but this is a normal occurrence. Right now, my brain was filled with large amounts of memories about the breathing technique and the many matching sequences of practiced experience. Compared to an average person, I did not have to go on the roundabout route. I didn't feel it in my previous life, but in this world, the cognitive core really gives me a huge advantage compared to an average person. I mumbled on. With this cognitive core's ability to simulate and analyze, I am able to obtain the same result as a person who has to go through 10 years of hard work and experience. I only have to do exactly what the cognitive core has presented, and I will be able to do things in the most accurate manner. The breathing technique had many contradictions, and some of them required more than a verbal explanation to be understood. One had to go through the experience of training and follow some complicated paths. Only then would they be able to gain enlightenment. But these things could all be avoided with the cognitive core's analyzing abilities. I'll give it a try, I thought, and my body laid on the floor in the shape of a cross. According to the suggestions on the breathing technique presented by the cognitive core, there was no need for any special actions to complement it, but simply to find the most suitable and comfortable position. First, I must hold my breath for 65 seconds, then take 3 long and 1 short breaths. The duration and frequency must be I followed the description of the breathing technique and gradually entered a state of cultivation. I looked unconscious. My face was bright red and my temples throbbed as if carrying out some kind of intense exercise. As time passed, my face grew redder, and eventually, I began to perspire some faint black-colored fluid. After I had maintained this process for over 20 minutes, I opened both of my eyes and opened my mouth to exhale. A black-colored breath was exhaled just like this. Within my body, some cracking noises could be made out. I stood up and moved my limbs. My whole body was warm, as if I had just undergone a vigorous exercise. Cognitive core, display my body statistics. I ordered. A system prompt appeared. Alaric Vance. Strength, 0.4 agility, 0.5 vitality, 0.4 state, mild injury. I remained impassive, changed the method of display, and moved the data back to 10 decimal points. Also, make comparisons with the data before the cultivation. With my orders, the image flickered, and the body statistics showed 10 more decimal points. The last 3 numbers had not stopped changing. A system prompt reported, beep. After comparison, undergoing the ironclad guard training increases the host's strength by 0.005, agility by 0.006, and vitality by 0.004. The cognitive core faithfully relayed the message. Amen. Because this was the first practice, the figures are still climbing up. I analyzed and said, I've only cultivated for a bit over 20 minutes, but the data's increase is already rather considerable. With perseverance, it's just a matter of time before I have the stats of an ironclad guard like Silas. Which is to say, those 10-odd ironclad guards are all ironclad guards. I thought indifferently, what a pity. According to my memory and the cognitive core's analysis, breathing techniques have cultivation limits. The Vance family's breathing technique can only be practiced once a day. Additional practice will not only have no additional benefits, but will even cause harm to the body. Cognitive core, are there any methods to let me increase the number of times I can practice the breathing technique? I asked. The cognitive core responded, medicinal items are required as a supplement. List all the necessary medicinal items. The cognitive core listed quinoline element, Marco 21, magnesium dioxide, a whole bunch of medicinal items, which were all from my previous life. Is it possible to substitute any of them with other medicinal items or herbs? This seemed to be an obviously impossible task, but I furrowed my brows and asked anyway. The cognitive core prompted, a sample is needed to analyze the medicinal properties. As of now, the data is insufficient. As long as there is a way, then it's all right. I heaved a sigh of relief. I looked at my own body again. Because large amounts of sticky substance had been produced after the breathing technique training, my body felt very sticky, which was extremely uncomfortable to the touch. I frowned. Looks like I'll have to wash up first. I began to make my way out of the horse-drawn carriage. It was midnight by this hour, and the various young nobles were all sleeping soundly in their tents. I quietly stepped out of the carriage and ran towards a small river that was nearby. A system prompt warned, "Warning, a human is approaching." I pretended that I was oblivious and continued my advances. "What are you trying to do?" A voice rang behind me. So fast, my pupils shrank. I had already been aware, but I was still unable to discover that they had arrived behind me. If they have any bad intentions, then I definitely won't be able to resist in any way. On the surface, I still pretended to be scared out of my wits. Who? I turned around my body to look back, seeing the ironclad guard who had been distributing the rations earlier in the day. I recalled him as Silas, the ironclad guard who had distributed rations. Hello, Sir Silas. I feel that I'm a little dirty and wanted to wash myself. My face was pale, as if I was frightened, and did not even have the capabilities to speak properly. Wash yourself. The ironclad guard furrowed his brows and wrinkled his nose. He could indeed smell a stench coming from me. All right. It is rather dangerous here at night, especially for young nobles like you bunch. Return quickly after washing. The ironclad guard Silas said, not paying any more mind to me. Silas turned around and walked towards the heart of the horse-drawn carriage encampment, where his tent was. Thank you for your reminders, Sir Silas. I called out, my voice carrying just enough to be polite, whether he truly heard it or not. Always being careful was a principle I lived by, one that had saved my life countless times in my past, and which I knew would be crucial in this new world. After Silas's retreating form vanished into the darkness, I continued my journey toward the small river, the sounds of its trickling water already faintly audible. As I walked, I casually plucked a wild plant, its leaves a dark, almost bruised green, and popped a stalk into my mouth. I chewed thoughtfully. Silas, the ironclad guard, must have noticed something, I mused, the bitter taste of the plant spreading across my tongue. But it hardly matters. A noble practicing a family's inherited ironclad guard training is a common enough sight. Besides, he already possesses the physical qualities of an ironclad guard himself, meaning he undoubtedly has his own breathing technique. He wouldn't need mine. I considered offering him a copy if he expressed interest, but quickly dismissed the thought. Given the vast disparity in our current strengths, I had no intention of jealously guarding the Vance family secrets. It seemed unlikely that Silas, or any seasoned ironclad guard for that matter, would even be impressed by the breathing techniques passed down through minor noble families like mine. The bitter taste lingered, vaguely nostalgic. It reminded me of some concoctions my younger self had been forced to consume during childhood experiments. A calm, synthesized voice spoke directly into my mind. Analysis complete. No beneficial properties for the host's body observed. Hooey. I immediately spat out the grass stalk, wiping my mouth with the back of my hand. I replaced it with a different plant, its leaves softer, more pliable. Log the shape and qualities of the previous plant and save it. I commanded my cognitive core mentally. Now, initiate another round of analysis. The core responded instantly. Task complete. Beginning quality analysis. From this experiment, as if projected onto a screen in my mind's eye, I watched the intricate procedures unfold within the cognitive core. Beep. Experiment complete. This unnamed plant possesses a mild paralysis effect. Based on Alaric's memories, this one is called trinite grass. Isn't it cognitive core? I queried. Rename it trinite grass and save it to the database. Beep. Saving completed. MMN. This looks like a red fruit, I mumbled, plucking a cluster of small, vibrant red berries from a nearby thorny shrub. They were only the size of my thumb, ripening atop barbed vines, their appearance deceptively beautiful. I carefully avoided the thorns and picked one, then bit into it with a satisfying crunch. A gush of sweet juice filled my mouth. The taste is similar to an apple, just a tad sweeter. I evaluated. Cognitive core. Analyze. Over the course of my walk to the river, I saved data on more than 30 types of plants and herbs. Disappointingly, not a single one proved to be of any significant use to me. I finally arrived at the small river. The crisp, piercing sound of water trickling over rocks cut through the otherwise silent night, a welcome auditory cue. Cognitive core. Scan the surroundings. I commanded. Even if the black-robed Silas hadn't implicitly warned me about the dangers of the wilds, I still relied on my cognitive core to minimize risks. Beep. Surrounding area scanned. No dangers detected within a radius of several miles. The cognitive core reported with its usual unflappable efficiency. Good. No unwanted interruptions, I muttered. I certainly don't want to be caught running back to camp mid-wash. That would indeed make me the biggest laughingstock. I quickly shed my outer robes and underclothes, stepping naked into the icy embrace of the river. The frigid water engulfed my body, sending a shock through me that was surprisingly refreshing, washing away the sticky residue of my earlier training. This water is truly cold, I thought, shivering slightly. I'm starting to miss the water heaters from my previous life. It was during one of my recent late-night training sessions with Rory, under the silver glow of the moon, that I had pushed my new body and the Crimson Cross discipline to its limits. The metallic ring of two steel blades clashing reverberated through the quiet clearing. Kalen, you're still no match for me. Give it up, Rory declared, gripping his great sword with both hands, a boisterous laugh escaping his lips. We're not done yet, I retorted, my feet moving in the strange, optimized footwork of the Crimson Cross discipline. I launched another attack. Huh. Rory swung his two-handed blade, the movement generating a sinister rustle of wind. My crossblade swept up, deflecting Rory's strike. Good. Your parry stance is improving, Rory praised, his voice loud and clear. Careful. My next attack will be on your left leg. Bring it on. I prepared myself, anticipating his move. Watch me, Rory roared, then swung his two-handed sword in a beautiful, deadly arc towards my right leg. I retreated a step, blocking his heavy blade mid-air with my own. You explicitly said the left leg. You didn't keep your word. Huh, that's called tactics, Rory guffawed, pulling back his massive sword. It's to test your agility. My father always taught me, if one doesn't know how to scheme, then one day they'll surely be played to death by others. I only want to scheme, not to be the target of schemes. No more, no more. You're getting better every time, Rory exclaimed, scratching his head in a puzzled manner. I wouldn't be able to beat you after a few more days. Kalen, my sword technique was passed down by a sentinel knight. I poured blood and sweat into training, so much so that my teacher said my swordplay was better than the average ironclad guard. Yet, you, who can fight me to a standstill, how could you have been beaten by Kendrick? These sword techniques were taught to me by my father when I was younger, I explained, playing into Alaric's established narrative. Unfortunately, I had forgotten them, and I'm currently trying to practice more to recall them. I clenched my fists, feigning a flush of determination. Once I have the strength, I will definitely seek vicious revenge and break Kendrick's legs. I maintained the image of a hot-blooded youth, fueled by determination after a setback. My dear Kalen, I believe in you. You will definitely fulfill your wish, Rory said, patting my shoulder with a look of pity in his eyes. Though, currently, with your ability, it's already sufficient to seek your revenge. After our sparring, Rory had a decent grasp of my improved strength. Right now, I can deal with one or two of them, but Kendrick has 5 members in his gang, I said, feigning distress. In reality, I was confident I could handle Kendrick and his cronies, but without an excuse, how could I trick Rory into continuously practicing with me? Oh, right, you mentioned Sentinel Knights earlier. What are they? I asked casually, remembering Rory's earlier complaint, diverting the conversation. You mean the Sentinel Knights? Rory's eyes widened. They're one realm higher than ironclad guards. No matter where they go, they're considered a formidable force. If one is lucky, a king might even play host to them. And if one is willing to pledge loyalty, they'll definitely become a troop commander. Their physical bodies have been pushed to the extremes, and rumors say that apart from a long-distance crossbow formation, even a heavy cavalry troop wouldn't be able to stop them from advancing. So powerful, I muttered, genuinely intrigued. A troop commander held the same status as an earl, and even Baron Elias Vance would have to greet them with deference. A heavy cavalry troop was the peak of military might in this era of medieval weapons. Once they charged, even a smaller city's walls might crumble. For a sentinel knight to be able to fight them with merely their physical body, how strong must they truly be? Seeing the yearning expression on my face, Rory laughed loudly and consoled me. You don't have to envy them. A magus possesses an even more mysterious and stronger power compared to that of an ironclad guard. As long as you become a magus acolyte, your status is comparable to that of a sentinel knight. And if you become an actual magus, then congratulations. Killing a sentinel knight is easier than stepping on an ant. The various kings from kingdoms will all strive to be first and fear to be last in stuffing their beautiful daughters onto your bed. A magus is that powerful? I asked skeptically. Then why are the ironclad guards so cold to us, who have the possibility of turning into a magus? They are nothing but mere ironclad guards. About that? I'm not too sure, Rory replied, awkwardly touching his nose. But a magus's status is definitely very high. My father told me this. I can swear it upon the Blackwood clan's reputation. All right. It's not like I don't believe you, I said, feigning exasperation. Silently, I commanded my cognitive core. Cognitive core, scan the person in front of me. A voice resonated in my mind. Beep. Name, Rory Blackwood. Strength, 1.9. Agility, 1.8. Vitality, 1.9. Status, healthy. Rory's stats couldn't have been achieved by standard training alone. As he himself said, he had trained with ironclad guard techniques since he was young, which explained his impressive physique. Warriors who began cultivating ironclad guard breathing techniques and thus improved their physique, but hadn't yet managed to ignite their internal life energy, were commonly known as preparatory ironclad guards. Rory's physique was considered peak standard, even among these preparatory ironclad guards. This was undoubtedly linked to his noble status, allowing him access to large amounts of expensive medicine to aid his physical development. All right, we've rested enough now, let's head back, Rory declared, glancing around. I don't want to return too late and find those ironclad guards staring coldly at me. The bright moonlight bathed the clearing in a shimmering silver, the tranquility of the night punctuated only by the occasional chirping of insects. I hadn't wanted to attract attention by training during the day, so I'd been sneaking out to practice with Rory at night. This had not escaped the notice of the ironclad guards. After a few encounters, however, I'd found their attitude to be remarkably cold and indifferent. As long as we didn't stray too far from the encampment and cause actual trouble, they simply didn't care. Just one more round, I said, a mischievous glint in my eye. After this, I'll return this cross blade to you. N. Eh. Rory seemed momentarily distracted, then his eyes lit up. Are you finally done with it? Gareth has been bothering me endlessly for it. To train in sword techniques, the first requirement was, of course, a crossblade. Many young nobles wore warriors' robes, with a sword attached to their waist. The original Alaric Vance, however, had not. He found it too heavy, too restrictive, and due to his self-indulgent nature, he had traveled without even a dagger. This had left me in an awkward, weaponless situation. For the sake of practice, I had turned my attention to the first friend I had encountered upon waking, Rory. Using subtle threats about exposing embarrassing secrets from Alaric's past, I had successfully coerced Rory into lending me a weapon and sparring with me. Thinking back to the look of utter betrayal and despair on Rory's face, as if he'd just encountered the worst friend imaginable, a suppressed laugh escaped me. Your swordplay is improving at an extremely fast pace, Rory noted, still looking a bit puzzled. But do you truly not need the crossblade anymore? I'm quite familiar with Gareth, so even if I were to lend it to you a little while longer, it's really no big deal. Thank you for your kind intentions, I replied with a genuine smile, rejecting his offer. But I really don't need it. After this period of sparring, I had already thoroughly analyzed the Vance family's secret technique. Furthermore, thanks to the cognitive core, my swordplay would always remain at its peak state, my skills never growing rusty from lack of physical practice. Good. Then we'll fight one more match, with the same rules, Rory declared, his voice firm. I'll only use the same amount of strength as you. As he spoke, he picked up his large two-handed sword and walked towards the center of the patch of grass, its polished blade reflecting the moonlight with a cold, sharp gleam. I walked over to meet him. Come on. This time, I won't hold back. I had an experiment in mind and had issued the challenge precisely to carry it out. Cognitive core. Establish task. Analyze the opponent's strength and the surroundings to formulate the best plan to defeat him. A voice in my head chimed. Task establishing. Beginning analysis. After a brief pause, the core continued. Simulation results. Host is unwounded. Target loses ability to fight. Please confirm whether to activate vision aid. Turn it on, I commanded. Instantly, countless blue lines overlaid my vision, transforming the clearing into a kind of virtual battleground. The cognitive core's voice followed. According to the target's reactions, there is a 99.98% probability that the first attack will be directed at the host's right arm. Most effective method of combat. Sidestep, jump slash. The blue light projections in my retina had already formed an image of Rory, raising his sword and slashing towards my right arm. Heh, watch the sword, Rory shouted, and just as predicted, he initiated his attack, waving his two-handed sword. He charged forward, his movements almost perfectly mirroring the cognitive core's projection. My lips curled into a slight smile. I dodged the attack precisely as instructed, then raised both hands, gripping my cross blade tightly. Leaping high into the air, I viciously swung the blade down. Jump slash. Damn, how did this happen? Rory cried out in surprise, ducking the cross blade with a hasty roll on the ground. My cross blade struck the earth, kicking up a shower of mud and small stones. Rory scrambled to his feet, a serious expression now etched onto his face. He looked as if I had predicted his attack, as if I had read his every motion and knew them intimately. If you're not attacking, then I'm going to counterattack, I said, a predatory smile spreading across my face. Bring it on. Rory stared nervously at me, his massive sword held defensively. I gripped my crossblade, took a deliberate step forward, and thrust. Every action, every movement, was performed with textbook precision. Rory made to block, but his body shifted instinctively to the side, dodging my thrust. As he evaded, he countered my attack with a slash of his own. The best way to react, left turn 50 degrees, horizontal slash. I dodged Rory's greatsword, then countered with a horizontal slash that nearly clipped his side. The longer we sparred, the more sweat beaded on Rory's brow. Every one of his attacks, every feint, I parried perfectly. His evasive maneuvers grew smaller, his options dwindling. Enough. I'm putting everything into this. Rory roared, swinging his greatsword in a wide, desperate arc that clashed violently with my crossblade. Clang. A glint of silver flashed as Rory's greatsword flew from his grasp, embedding itself hilt deep in the turf a few yards away. The blade hummed with residual force. My own crossblade rested horizontally against Rory's waist. You've lost, I stated calmly. Indeed, Rory muttered, his chest heaving. Then he looked at me, eyes wide. How did you do that? Quite simple, actually, I replied, withdrawing my blade and offering a slight bow. After training with you for so long, I've memorized your attack patterns. My patterns? Rory echoed, bewildered. Precisely. Everyone develops habits in combat. Once you recognize those patterns, it becomes trivial to anticipate their next move, and then, to set a trap. I merely exploited your predictability. I kept my tone flat, analytical, suppressing the smirk that threatened to surface. Rory let out a long, ragged breath. I see. He stared at me for a moment, as if I were some kind of prodigy, or perhaps a cheat. Your gift with the blade is truly unparalleled, Alaric. If for some reason you don't make it into the Ethelgard Scholarium, I'll personally recommend you to the Royal Academy of Sentinels in the capital of Eldoria. The Royal Academy of Sentinels, you say? I knew of it. It was the premier ironclad guard institution in Eldoria, Rory's home kingdom. Entry requirements were notoriously stringent, reserved for true prodigies. My blade work is merely a pastime, I replied, shrugging. Becoming a magus, however, is my true aspiration. An ironclad guard's strength, while formidable, was still quantifiable within the parameters of my prior understanding. It existed within the realm of enhanced physical capabilities. Magi, on the other hand, rumors spoke of manipulating lightning and fire, of achieving unnaturally extended lifespans. Their powers seemed to defy known physics, a boundless potential that captivated the scientist in me. More than raw power, Magi were scholars, driven by knowledge. They meticulously experimented, studying the very laws of nature to harness immense power. This path resonated deeply with my former life as a scientist. It wasn't just about strength, it was about understanding, control, and pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Exactly. Rory's face grew serious, though his tone remained a bit too dramatic. Even a Sentinel Knight is but a servant to a full-fledged magus. Their power is simply beyond our comprehension. I rolled my eyes. Why do you always sound like a wandering bard reciting heroic epics? Rory chuckled, shaking his head. That. My father sent me for noble decorum training in the court. Guess some of it stuck. He was back to his usual boisterous self. He suddenly blinked, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Alaric, you don't have a fiancé, do you? How about I introduce you to my sister, Melinda? She's quite renowned for her beauty. Get out of here. I shot back, a wave of annoyance washing over me. Under the moonlight, we strolled back from the grasslands, still trading playful jabs. Good night, Rory. Good night, Alaric. After returning his borrowed crossblade and bidding him farewell, I made my way back to my carriage. The dimly lit carriage was empty save for me. A faint, cloying odor, a mix of stale air, dried sweat, and something vaguely rotten, permeated the interior. It was why most of the other noble youths avoided it, preferring to escape into the open fields like wild colts whenever we stopped. The societal norms regarding relationships in this world were surprisingly liberal, particularly among the nobility. My cognitive core, with its enhanced sensory input, frequently detected couples in various stages of affection around the camp. This was precisely why I sought out more isolated spots for my training. Observing their uninhibited displays, however, often ignited a flicker of irritation in me, a vestige of Alaric's original memories, recalling his impulsive and entitled behavior. Who would have thought, I mused with a bitter smile, that inhabiting a younger body would amplify even such base desires? Shaking off the lingering thoughts, I commanded, Cognitive core, display my current statistics. A familiar interface materialized in my vision. Alaric Vance. Strength, 1.5, Agility, 1.6, Vitality, 1.4. Status, healthy. It had been just over a month since I first optimized and began practicing the Crimson Cross Discipline's breathing technique. In that time, my physical condition had not only caught up to my peers, but surpassed many. My performance against Rory had been carefully measured, revealing only a fraction of my true advancement. This was a deliberate choice, allowing him to misjudge my capabilities. Not bad at all, I murmured. Time for today's cultivation. I settled into the familiar stance, entering the meditative state required for the Crimson Cross discipline. This was my daily ritual. The cognitive core had advised that practicing the breathing technique again after a strenuous session offered the best results. 20 minutes later, I was drenched in sweat, but the dark, viscous impurities that had once poured from my pores were noticeably less. I opened my eyes, letting out a soft sigh of exasperation as I observed my body. The breathing technique's efficacy is diminishing, I noted aloud. Logical. The cognitive core estimates that even my optimized version of the Vance family's technique will largely cease to provide significant gains once my core physical stats approach 2.0. That's considered the threshold for a provisional sentinel. Beyond that, progress relies on raw willpower, the stimulation of life energy through extreme stress, or perhaps even near-death experiences. With a quiet hum, I pulled a peculiar yellow fruit from my pocket. Its surface was mottled with dark spots, giving it an unsettling, almost decayed appearance. I popped the fruit into my mouth, then followed it with a fibrous herb root, chewing them in tandem. A system notification chimed in my mind. Host's body is recovering from fatigue. Additional Crimson Cross discipline practice is feasible. Excellent, I murmured. This herbal concoction, a product of countless cognitive core-assisted experiments over the past month, was proving invaluable. It not only alleviated fatigue, but allowed me to increase the daily repetitions of the breathing technique, accelerating my gains. Coupled with several other strength-enhancing tonics I'd been formulating, my physical development had progressed at a truly remarkable rate. Again, I declared, and once more plunged into the meditative flow of the Crimson Cross discipline. Over the past month, our convoy had traversed several small kingdoms, eventually venturing deep into the sprawling wilderness. Here, civilization thinned out dramatically, giving way to desolate stretches of land, marked by the tracks of predatory beasts and the telltale signs of nomadic bandits. Since entering this territory, we'd faced several close calls. Though no lives had been lost, my internal sense of urgency, my thirst for power, intensified with each passing day. As the first rays of dawn illuminated the horizon, our convoy resumed its slow, creaking journey. I sat alone in a corner of the carriage, arms crossed over my chest. The other youths, still harboring their disgust from Princess Lyra's machinations, consistently gave me a wide berth, inadvertently granting me the space I preferred. I still don't know what method Princess Lyra employed, I mused, a faint smirk playing on my lips. But the isolation is persistent. A normal youth would have been driven mad by now. Fortunate for me, they're dealing with Alaric Vance. I stretched my back contentedly. Last night's training had left me thoroughly exhausted, and this afforded space was perfect for some much-needed rest. This world is vast indeed, I thought, my eyes half closed. We've been traveling for half a year, and the Ethelgard Scholarium still feels a lifetime away. Haven't even glimpsed an ocean yet. My thoughts drifted, and I slipped into a light slumber, eyes still half-lidded. Ding-ling-ling. The sharp jingle of a bell cut through the morning air. The black-robed, ironclad guard, Silas, stood outside, ringing a small handbell. Ladies and gentlemen, time to disembark for luncheon. Already, I opened my eyes fully. This routine was becoming incredibly monotonous. After disembarking and collecting my meager portion of food, I chewed on a piece of bland white bread as I headed towards a patch of tall grass at the edge of the campsite. My previously gathered cache of substitute herbs was depleted. It was time to restock. As I walked, my gaze scanned the surrounding flora. Jade root fruit, I murmured, a system prompt confirming its identity. Already cataloged. No use for me. Spine-leaf grass, I noted. Analysis, rare wilderness plant. Potential for harvesting. I plucked a dirty, brown stalk. Its edges were lined with needle-sharp thorns. Carefully, I snapped the blade in half, dabbing a finger into the jade-colored sap that welled up. A frown creased my brow as I tasted it. Disappointment. I tossed the spine-leaf grass aside. Found it. Viper bloom fruit. My eyes lit up. As I casually walked towards the shrubbery, I spotted, out of the corner of my eye, the same distinctively spotted yellow fruit I'd consumed last night. A surge of satisfaction warmed me. Hee. Well, what have we here, Alaric? A sneering voice cut through the air. Should I be surprised? Eating wild fruits by the roadside? You truly do your noble lineage proud, eh? I had just plucked the viper bloom fruit and tucked it into my pocket when the irritating voice registered. Kendrick, I identified, lifting my gaze. It was the brute responsible for the original Alaric's demise. Kendrick, with his fiery red hair and bulging muscles, stood before me. His arms, thick as my own thighs, were crossed over his chest, a mocking smirk plastered across his face. A few other minor noble youths flanked him, all eager to join in the japing. Cognitive core, scan their statistics. I commanded silently. Scan complete. Kendrick, strength, 1.7, agility, 1.2, vitality, 1.5. Status, healthy. The data flashed, confirming my suspicions. Kendrick's physical attributes were indeed impressive for someone his age, almost equivalent to two common adult men. It was no surprise he'd been able to deliver the fatal blow to the original Alaric. Among the nobility, such development wasn't uncommon. Consistent daily training and the right breathing techniques could yield these results. The youths accompanying Kendrick, however, were less impressive. Most had stats below 1.0. I even spotted a pale-faced boy whose attributes barely registered 0.5, a pathetic challenge, even for the original Alaric. My cognitive core quickly processed the comparative data. Kendrick's raw strength was comparable to mine now, but his fighting technique, lacking the core's real-time analysis, would be vastly inferior. As for the others, they were mere window dressing, their stats so low that dealing with them would be akin to an adult swatting flies. "Is there a problem?" I asked, my voice calm, almost bored. My lack of a reaction clearly caught Kendrick off guard. He'd expected fury, or perhaps fear. Instead, my indifference left him momentarily speechless. "If this concerns Princess Lyra," I continued, a slight lift to my eyebrow, "I believe I offered an apology, and she, in turn, extended her forgiveness." Internally, a thought flashed. A probe from Princess Lyra? Had a month of subtle ostracization not been enough for her? "That's right. It's about Lyra," Kendrick roared, his hands clenching into tight fists. "She might have forgiven you, but I haven't." "All right," I said, spreading my hands in a gesture of feigned helplessness, a flicker of genuine mockery in my eyes. "What do you want, then?" Kendrick clearly hadn't expected such an immediate, almost submissive, response. He stammered for a moment before managing to articulate. You must swear an oath never to bother Princess Lyra again." "Agreed," I said instantly, placing my right hand over the crest pinned to my tunic, the Vance family emblem, a stylized crossblade beneath a soaring skylark. "By my honor as a member of the Vance family, I swear I will never trouble Princess Lyra again of my own volition." Such an oath, invoking a family's reputation, was considered among the most solemn commitments a noble could make. To break it meant incurring the universal scorn of the aristocracy. "So, Master Kendrick," I said, offering a slight, perfectly executed noble bow, "may I be excused?" "Hold on," Kendrick barked, a greedy glint entering his eyes. My lack of resistance had clearly emboldened him, shifting his tactics. "According to noble conduct, you still owe it compensation. Hand over all your magic crystals." Magic crystals. A collective gasp rippled through the small crowd of onlookers. "Magic crystals?" I repeated slowly. From Alaric's inherited memories, I knew these were a form of highly valued currency among magi, often required as a supplemental entry fee for acolytes without sufficient backing into academies like Ethelgard Scholarium. I had no precise knowledge of the amount needed, as I possessed precisely 0 magic crystals myself. Baron Elias Vance had apparently exhausted every avenue trying to acquire even one, a testament to their extreme rarity and value. I had been deliberately avoiding pointless confrontations. To me, the transient satisfaction of winning a trivial squabble paled in comparison to the tangible gains of relentless cultivation and personal growth. Besides, I bore Kendrick no ill will. In fact, I probably owed him a perverse debt of gratitude for delivering the fatal blow to the original Alaric, thus providing me with this new existence. I was a pragmatist. For me, logical advantage always outweighed superficial notions of face or pride. Even the sacred oath sworn on his family's honor seemed to mean little to Kendrick. But what he demanded next, that touched a raw nerve. You can't do that. Those arcane wardens won't let you off." I gripped the small sack I held even tighter, a frantic expression I didn't truly feel plastered on my face. Kendrick let out a harsh laugh. "Why would those black robes meddle in our affairs? Don't forget, I beat you half dead before, and not a single soul batted an eye." He clenched his fist, and I heard the faint, unsettling crack of bones. "If you don't want me to snap your bones one by one, hand over the magic crystals obediently." As Kendrick lumbered closer, his large frame cast a daunting shadow over me. I scanned my surroundings. This spot was already a considerable distance from the main camp. Around us, only the sycophants Kendrick had brought along watched, their faces reflecting a mixture of anticipation and morbid curiosity, as if viewing a spectacle. "Don't bother looking," Kendrick sneered. "No one will come to save you." "Really? That's even better then." A sudden, genuine smile stretched across my face. My silhouette blurred. When I reappeared, I was already behind Kendrick. "Perfect. I can finally repay you for that day's incident." A fierce kick erupted from my leg, carrying an intense gust of wind. It slammed into Kendrick's waist. Kendrick grunted, a guttural sound as an immense force sent his body flying through the air. Thud! He hit the ground hard. A sharp pain shot through his waist, and his eyes, when they focused on me, were tinged with red. You dared! You dared! You actually dared to hurt me! He roared, struggling to his feet. You're dead! I will hang you! Savage, bloodthirsty light glinted in his gaze. My pupils contracted slightly. Is this the advantage of a superior constitution? I had put 50% of my strength into that kick, yet it had barely phased Kendrick. My core analysis showed his strength stat was still significantly higher than mine. Huh. Kendrick waved a fist like a berserk bear, a blur of raw power. I flashed sideways, dodging the blow with a hair's breadth. Kendrick's fist smashed into the small tree behind me, leaving a deep, undeniable dent. A strength of 1.7 is indeed not a trivial matter. Such a heavy punch, I thought swiftly. Even with my current constitution, I couldn't withstand more than a few hits. Cognitive core. Simulate the best method to defeat him. A voice resonated in my mind. Beep. Task established. Starting assist mode. The cognitive core's powerful computational ability instantly formulated an optimal strategy. Duck. The cognitive core prompted. Task established. Initiating assist mode. I immediately crouched, ducking under Kendrick's roaring, clumsy tackle. A flaw appeared in enemy's defense. Most effective attacking location, armpit, the cognitive core's voice chimed. My figure continuously weaved and flashed, dodging Kendrick's furious but unrefined attacks while steadily closing the distance. Do you know? I taunted, a cool edge to my voice. While your strength is formidable, you lack agility. That's the inherent disadvantage of your body's shape. The fact that I could still speak while in motion showed I was far from exerting myself fully. Is this still Alaric Vance? One of the surrounding youths stammered, wide-eyed. Hey, why has he become so much more powerful? Shock rippled through the small group. Under their disbelieving stares, I launched a punch. It struck Kendrick's armpit with my full, concentrated power. He cried out in pain, collapsing to the ground, writhing and unable to get up for a long moment. My full-strength stat was now at least 1.5, not vastly different from Kendrick's, but hitting a vulnerable spot made all the difference. Kendrick lay there, eyes bloodshot, groaning. You're dead for sure. My family will not let you off. Oh, really? I remained indifferent to his threat, even delivering another precise kick to his lower abdomen. Kendrick immediately curled into a ball, resembling a cooked prawn. I squatted down, my face adorned with a wide, almost cheerful smile as I looked at Kendrick. Since you won't let me off anyway, don't you think it would be more pragmatic if I just made the first move and eliminated you now? In that moment, my smile must have looked like a demon's. Kendrick's eyes widened, a flicker of genuine terror replacing his anger. He's not joking. He truly dares to act. He felt as though a predator was staring at him, and all the rage vanished, replaced by a cold, primal fear. Mr. Alaric, Lord Alaric, you can't do that. I have the Ashworth clan behind me. If you kill me, you'll be in serious trouble, he blurted out, a desperate plea. Then do you admit your wrongs? I asked, a hint of ridicule in my tone. I admit my wrongs. I apologize. I'm sorry. Under the stark threat of death, Kendrick crumpled quickly. Very good. I accept your apology. My smile widened. In addition, according to the ancient laws of nobility, I have the right to request compensation for the grievous insult to my honor, not to mention the prior assault. My words, delivered with a smile, sent a shiver down Kendrick's spine. As compensation, I stated, my voice calm but firm, hand over all the magic crystals you possess. Oh, no, you can't do this. Kendrick struggled to protest. Do you know how many lives my family sacrificed to acquire these magic crystals? Sometimes, the world presents us with simple multiple-choice questions. Now, it's your turn, my dear Kendrick. Life or magic crystals? Choose one. I seemed entirely unmoved by Kendrick's desperate pleas. Instead, I calmly placed my boot on his face, gradually increasing the pressure. The boot pressed his head deeper and deeper into the dirt, an overwhelming, suffocating sensation. After what felt like an eternity, I released some of the pressure. So, have you considered your options properly? Hua, Kendrick gasped, sucking in great gulps of fresh air. His face was now a muddy, footprinted mess, a truly comical sight. Yet, none of the surrounding youths dared to even crack a smile. One of them, a lanky boy I recognized as Finian, slowly began to retreat, attempting to slip away from the tense scene. I picked up a small pebble. Wind estimation completed, the cognitive core announced. Shooting orbit adjusted. Whoosh. The pebble shot through the air, striking the escaping youth's leg. He yelped, tumbling to the ground. "Kendrick, see that?" I said, my gaze sweeping over the cowering youths. "Don't bother waiting for reinforcements. Furthermore, don't try to challenge my patience." Those who met my eyes instantly lowered their heads, their bodies trembling uncontrollably. "Okay, I can give you the magic crystals," Kendrick blurted, finally surrendering. "But I left them in the carriage. Follow me back to retrieve them." Magic crystals are so important, yet you don't carry them, leaving them casually in a carriage. I scoffed. "Are you truly treating me like a fool?" Such a childish lie, of course, couldn't bypass my analytical mind. "It seems you haven't had enough persuasion." A fierce glint flashed in my eyes. I grabbed Kendrick's arm and, with a sudden, sharp twist, I snapped it. Crack! An ear-splitting sound of bone fracture echoed, followed by Kendrick's agonizing scream. "If you still refuse to speak the truth, I'll break your other arm." No, 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 you can't do this. The arcane wardens won't let you off." Kendrick clutched his broken arm, rolling on the ground in agony. I offered a cold smile, echoing his earlier words back to him. "Haha, why would those arcane wardens meddle in our affairs? Did you forget that I was beaten half dead by you previously, and not a single soul paid any mind?" "Seems like you're truly yearning for death," I said, making a move as if to act again. Wait, fine, I'll give you the magic crystals, but you have to swear that you will not seek further revenge on me." Kendrick shrieked, his face pale as he saw me approach him again. "Okay, I swear on the honor of my Vance family," I responded, my voice clear and unwavering. Kendrick's face turned green. Struggling to a half-seated position on the ground, he fumbled inside his tunic and pulled out a small, golden pouch, tossing it at me. "All my magic crystals are here." I caught it, examining the pouch. It was palm-sized, intricately woven with gold and silver threads. In the center, an eagle and a shield motif were surrounded by leafy plants, evidently a family crest. I opened the pouch, revealing a dozen or so dark, obsidian-like crystals resting quietly within. Beep. Discovered an unknown energy source, the cognitive core alerted. "So, can they be used?" I asked inwardly, a flicker of excitement igniting in my chest. Searching database, information insufficient. Method of usage not found. Alert. An energy source with unknown radiation detected. Recommendation. Host body to strengthen defense. So that's how it is? I'm used internally, then turned to Kendrick. "Which scholarium are you attending?" Marshlight Conservatory," Kendrick stammered, his face still a picture of misery. "Marshlight Conservatory. I heard that the entry fee is 10 magic crystals, correct?" "Correct. Where did you hear that from?" Kendrick looked genuinely surprised. I offered a faint, mysterious smile. I had, in fact, never heard of any Marshlight Conservatory before. I was merely bluffing Kendrick, knowing most such institutions would have rounded figures for their fees. It wouldn't be a significant issue even if I guessed wrong. "Okay, I'll return them to you." I took 3 magic crystals from the pouch and tossed the rest, along with the pouch, back to Kendrick. "These 3 magic crystals will serve as my compensation." While I could have easily taken all of them, I was still uncertain about the attitudes of the various robed figures in this matter, the arcane wardens and the ironclad guards. I didn't want to needlessly test their bottom lines. By leaving Kendrick enough for his entry fee, I ensured I had a plausible excuse should anyone question my actions. Thank you. Kendrick's expression visibly improved. Losing all his magic crystals and being unable to enter the scholarium would have been a catastrophe. "Rest assured, I won't take your magic crystals." I raised my head, my gaze sweeping over the surrounding young nobles, whose hands were still tightly clenched into fists. I couldn't help but shake my head. "Thank you, Lord Alaric." Hearing my assurance, the other youths all breathed a collective sigh of relief and quickly bowed their heads in deference. "But," I added, looking pointedly at the youth I had knocked down earlier, the one who had tried to escape, "I want to request other compensation." I gestured to the crimson crossblade at his waist. "That crimson crossblade looks quite nice." The youth, looking thoroughly frightened, hastily replied, "Lord, you can have it." "Haha, I won't hold back then." I took the crimson crossblade from him. After gauging its weight, I nodded in satisfaction. As a noble's sword, its quality was excellent. The hilt was decorated with intricate floral patterns, preventing slippage, and the scabbard was made from polished sharkskin, giving it a luxurious feel. So the method of marking time here is surprisingly similar to my past life. I thought inwardly, idly turning the crystal pocket watch in my hand. Its finely crafted surface held 24 small frames, each representing an hour. Not only had I extorted a weapon from Kendrick's lackeys, but I'd also acquired spoils of war worth thousands of gold coins. This particular pocket watch had been contributed by a small, portly boy among them. As for the threat of retribution from their families, the Ashworth clan, to which Kendrick belonged, hailed from the Lyran Dominion, several kingdoms away from Baron Elias Vance's territory. Furthermore, relations between the two kingdoms were already strained, almost hostile. Not to mention, becoming a magus would take years, and even sending letters back and forth would consume considerable time. I gave it only a fleeting thought before relegating the matters between myself and Kendrick's family to the back of my mind. This time, I've truly made a profit. Moreover, magic crystals are the common currency among magi, making them incredibly useful for apprentices. I took out one of the magic crystals, flipping it around in my palm. It emitted a steady, cold sensation. According to the cognitive core's analysis, although this magic crystal emitted a faint, unknown radiation, its effect on the body seemed to be positive, subtly enhancing vitality. But, ever since the news of my defeating Kendrick spread, everyone's attitude towards me has completely shifted. Is this truly a world that respects only the strong? It had been 2 days since that incident, and the results of my confrontation with Kendrick had already circulated among the young nobles. The scene of me breaking Kendrick's arm, delivered with a smile, had apparently become a recurring nightmare for those present. When Kendrick finally returned to the main camp, he immediately hid inside his carriage, tending to his injuries. As for the other young nobles, they now visibly trembled the moment they saw me, quickly scattering. "Hello, Alaric. Would you like to join us for a game?" Alara, a noble girl from the same carriage as mine, approached me. Dressed in noble attire, her long legs were clad in something akin to the stockings from my previous life, giving her an alluring charm. This world's custom of respecting the strong was quickly becoming evident. The atmosphere in the carriage was now much more agreeable, and no one dared to openly oppose me. Several other noble girls had also extended invitations. Alara, it turned out, shared my carriage. "Thanks," I replied apologetically, "but I have friends joining me." "Ooh, I must be interrupting then. I'll invite you later on. Serafina and a few others are also quite interested in you." The long-legged girl smiled tenderly, lifted her skirt in a graceful curtsy, and then departed, leaving a tempting invitation hanging in the air. Girls nowadays truly mature early, I thought, a bitter smile touching my lips. "Haha, what did I just witness?" A boisterous voice cut through the air. "How many times has our young master Alaric been invited by lovely ladies?" "How can I compare to you, satin gold mane lion?" I rolled my eyes, using Rory's self-proclaimed nickname. "Your legendary exploits have already spread throughout the female circles of the entire convoy." Rory Blackwood approached, a wide grin on his face. "Didn't you want to avoid me earlier, so as not to be isolated? Are you no longer afraid of that?" "You're the talk of the camp now." Rory laughed. "Many girls are quite smitten. That Alara earlier wasn't bad either. I guarantee you, if you truly put your mind to it, you could win her over in 3 days." He chuckled again. "Furthermore, I must congratulate you on your successful revenge." With a flick of his hand, a glass bottle arced through the air. I caught it smoothly. Uncorking the oaken stopper, a rich, fruity aroma mixed with a faint hint of alcohol wafted out. I subconsciously took a deep breath, recognizing the pleasant scent. "Apple cider wine. I haven't had much of this in months," Rory declared, his voice booming. "Exactly, and it's a specialty from our Confederation of the Dawn. Took some serious effort to keep it hidden until now." He popped the cork on his bottle with a satisfying thwack. "To our Alaric. Cheers." "Cheers," I responded, a genuine smile touching my lips as our bottles clinked together with a clear chime. "And, thank you," I added, my tone sincere. Rory, a provisional sentinel with inherent strength and a natural leader among these young nobles, could have easily intervened when Kendrick was harassing me. Yet, he'd respected my unspoken desire to handle it myself, subtly boosting my training and keeping our burgeoning alliance quiet so Kendrick would make a move without reservation. He'd given me the space to assert my own pride, and for that, I was grateful. His meticulousness, his ability to subtly guide without directly controlling, impressed me. This isn't just about currying favor, I mused, taking a sip of the sweet, tart wine. It's about genuine connection, about forging loyalty. A fitting strategy for the Blackwood clan, with their Lionheart sigil, leaders of the Sunstone Collective. No need for thanks, Rory boomed, draining his bottle in one gulp. We're all members of the Sunstone Collective. How could I let those northern fools push you around? Too bad, Rory sighed, a hint of regret in his voice as he savored the lingering taste of the wine. We're deep in the wilderness now. No large cities in ages, and supplies are getting harder to find. Right? We're putting together a barbecue tonight, he continued, eyes lighting up. Just for our Sunstone Collective. Care to join? Of course. It would be my pleasure, I replied with a ready smile. My identity as a noble from the collective meant I was expected in this circle. Especially while my raw physical power was still developing, these social alliances were crucial for layered protection. The night had deepened. Above, the sky blazed with countless stars, casting a shimmering, silver veil over the sprawling camp. Around the central bonfire, groups of young men and women gathered, their laughter and light-hearted chatter filling the air. After months on the road, their initial aristocratic reserve had dissolved, replaced by a lively camaraderie. Come, Alaric, let me introduce you, Rory said, guiding me. This is Lord Rowan, descendant of Viscount Thorne. Rowan extended a hand, a broad smile on his face. Pleasure to meet you. I heard all about you putting Kendrick in his place. The pleasure's mine, I replied, my smile unwavering as we shook hands. And these are the sisters, Serena and Briar, Rory continued, leading me further around the fire. They're big fans. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Alaric, they chimed in unison. They were identical, each with sparkling aquamarine eyes and a blush rising on their cheeks. The pleasure is all mine, beautiful ladies. It's an honor to make your acquaintance, I responded, placing a hand over my chest in a traditional noble's bow. Rory looked like he might keel over as the two girls, still blushing, giggled and scurried away. You dog. You lucky dog. They're practically throwing themselves at you. Twins. Twins. He threw his hands up in mock despair. All right, Rory. I cut in, a knowing smirk on my face. I'm sure you have a purpose for this banquet beyond matchmaking, especially with supplies dwindling. My own desires were secondary, easily restrained. While I wasn't against a dalliance, timing and location were everything. Glad to see you caught on, Rory said, his casual smile fading to reveal a more serious, leader-like demeanor. He strode to the center of the gathering and wrapped a silver spoon against a metal plate. Ladies and gentlemen, apologies for the interruption, but if I could have your attention for a moment. His presence commanded respect. The chattering groups quieted, their gazes drawn to him. Firstly, Rory announced, his voice carrying across the camp, I'd like to officially welcome a new comrade to our ranks. Give it up for Alaric. He began to clap, and a wave of enthusiastic applause followed, echoing around us. I stood, offering a simple, dignified bow to the assembled faces. All right, Rory waved a hand, silencing the applause. I formed this small alliance for one purpose, to ensure every acolyte from our Sunstone Collective safely reaches the Ethelgard Scholarium and becomes a respected Lord Magus. But now, comrades, trouble looms, and it's time for us to truly unite. His expression turned somber, his tone grave. The festive mood evaporated, replaced by a quiet tension that spread through the crowd. Only Rory's voice now cut through the stillness. We're almost out of the wilderness, he continued, and soon we'll enter the Blighted Steppes. This is the final leg of our journey, and it's also the most perilous. The Blighted Steppes? I felt a jolt of surprise and immediately prompted my cognitive core to sift through Alaric's original memories for information. A system prompt chimed in my head, confirming the search. The continent, as documented in the cognitive core's compiled data from Alaric's memories, is vast and fragmented, a tapestry of countless kingdoms and dukedoms, lacking any unified name. The Sunstone Collective, which I've joined, originated from the continent's southeastern corner. This convoy, one of the first waves of Ethelgard Scholarium acolytes, has been journeying north, crossing countless territories. Beyond this wilderness lies a long, narrow stretch of plains, bordered by the ocean. And this particular stretch, the Blighted Steppes, is infamous. A true no-man's land, teeming with all manner of dangers. Legends speak of beasts so fierce even the most ruthless bandits avoid it. It's said to be littered with the bones of mercenaries, adventurers, and unwary travelers. And now, our convoy, packed with young Magus acolytes, is about to traverse it to reach the coast. But with the arcane wardens and archons of light protecting us, we'll surely make it through, a stout young man exclaimed, as a murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. True, Rory affirmed, raising his voice. With the Lord Magi and ironclad guards, our chances are certainly higher. But when those powerful figures are overwhelmed or simply can't reach us in time, we'll face death. It could be me, it could be you. Is that an outcome any of you wish to experience? Absolutely not, the stout boy stammered, his face flushing crimson as he slumped back down. Exactly, Rory declared. Our goal is to reach the Ethelgard Scholarium across the ocean and become respected magi. But the true, cruel screening begins now. My father received intelligence that large numbers of acolytes perish in the blighted steppes during every Magus convoy's journey. He delivered the grim news, a flicker of harsh reality in his eyes. What should we do? A wave of panic rippled through the younger acolytes. Many looked at Rory, their faces pale, desperately hoping he had a solution. Of course, that's precisely why we formed this alliance, Rory announced, his voice regaining its command. We've already coordinated with the other traveling parties. We'll be swapping positions to consolidate our Sunstone Collective into a cluster of adjacent carriages. The Arcane Wardens have already granted their permission for this. Furthermore, us noble males will take turns guarding the carriages. Naturally, we'll only be assisting the ironclad guards. As for the beautiful ladies, your duties will focus on logistics and keeping our quarters clean. He laid out his plan. And don't worry about weapons. We've already secured provisions, even managing to get our hands on a crossbow. A flurry of murmurs and excited chatter broke out among the assembled youth. After a brief discussion, the consensus was clear. Agreed, they chorused. The captaincy of this new guard detail naturally fell to Rory. He struck while the iron was hot, immediately assigning tasks and responsibilities. The barbecue continued after that, but the earlier light-hearted enthusiasm had largely been replaced by a more subdued, focused atmosphere. I'd actually planned to give you a crimson crossblade, Rory said, raising his cup as he approached me, nodding towards the sword hilt at my waist. But it seems you're already well equipped. Is it true, then, I asked, my voice low, that so many acolytes perish every time a Magus convoy crosses the blighted steppes? Of course, in the best-case scenarios, only 1 or 2 die. But there have been times when 10 or more perished. Rory shrugged, a grim expression on his face. Why else would I invest so much effort and resources into an alliance that dissolves the moment we reach the coast? Every seed planted expects a harvest, doesn't it? I replied with a wry chuckle. It was a pragmatic assessment. Grouping together undeniably increased their collective survival odds. Any acolyte who made it through would owe Rory and the Blackwood clan a debt of gratitude. If even one of them ascended to Magus, the political and social returns would be immense. And if they all perished, not much of a loss to him, either. Beyond your swordsmanship, your insight genuinely impresses me, Rory said, his eyes sparkling. Everything I've done here was at my father's instruction. Well then, he said, extending his hand. Are you willing to help me? As you wish, I responded, a knowing smile playing on my lips as I clasped his hand firmly. My agreement to Rory's request wasn't impulsive. I had weighed the pros and cons carefully. My cognitive core's compiled data on the blighted steppes was still limited, making cooperation a pragmatic and sensible choice. Hush! The bitter wind swept across the plains, lashing at us like icy blades. With every breath, I tasted the raw, earthy scent of wild grass. It's already been 15 days since we entered the blighted steppes, I muttered, my gaze sweeping over the convoy. Traces of damage marred the carriages, deep gouges, 3 claw marks linked as if from a single, massive paw. A grim testament to our journey. The blighted steppes harbored dangers capable of overwhelming even ironclad guards, let alone ordinary humans, I reflected. Despite the arcane wardens and archons of light increasing patrols, and our group banding together, casualties had still occurred. Those claw marks on the carriages? They were the work of a pack of steppe dire wolves. On our first night, the convoy had been ambushed. Though no lives were lost then, the sheer power of the dire wolves, almost overturning the carriages, had left a lasting impression on me. After that incident, no one dared to sleep outside. We all crammed into the carriages, but even then, more casualties followed. My expression tightened. Even with ironclad guards patrolling, biological needs were unavoidable. And in the blighted steppes, even a quick trip outside the carriage was an invitation to disaster. One acolyte had stepped out, been bitten by a venomous insect, and died instantly. My cognitive core calculated the poison would corrode neural pathways within 13 seconds. No time for even the archons of light to intervene. They could only watch the boy perish. After that, everyone only left the carriages when it was absolutely, critically necessary. But with so many bodies crammed into such small spaces, the stench inside was becoming unbearable. I'd volunteered to help the ironclad guards drive a carriage, earning me precious time in the fresh, if frigid, air. Though being outside seemed more dangerous, with a seasoned ironclad guard right beside me, it was arguably safer than the cramped interior. As for the skill of driving a carriage, I simply listened to the ironclad guard's brief instructions, and my cognitive core had recorded and optimized the entire process. Nightfall approaches. Everyone, return to your carriages for rest. A shout from the lead wagon echoed down the line, bringing the entire convoy to a halt. Traveling at night was not only perilous, but would exhaust the horses to death, creating even greater problems. Your carriage handling is quite proficient, the ironclad guard beside me commented, a rare hint of approval in his voice. Thank you for the compliment, I replied with a nod. Opening the carriage door, a blast of foul, stifling air assailed me. My brow furrowed instinctively, but seeing the dazed, weary expressions on the other acolytes, I simply sighed inwardly. The carefree youthfulness had long vanished, replaced by a pervasive gloom ever since the first death. It was another reason I preferred the dangers of the outside. Alaric, you're back. Finian, the freckled youngster, managed a strained smile as he greeted me. Indeed, I settled into my spot, surveying the cramped space before pulling out a piece of flatbread. The flatbread was dry, like gnawing on sawdust. I chewed slowly, forcing it down, a sharp pain in my throat signaling the struggle. Quickly, I unstoppered my canteen and chugged a large amount of water to wash it down. A sigh of relief escaped me once the last crumb was gone. Supplies had become critically scarce since entering the Blighted Steppes. Gold coins, for all their worth, were mere pebbles out here. There were no merchants to spend them with. Alaric, what's the word? Finian asked, his voice barely a whisper after I finished eating. How many more days until we're out of these damned plains? His question hung in the air, clearly echoing the thoughts of everyone around us, as all eyes turned to me, searching for an answer. As I drove the carriage, I chatted with the ironclad guard Silas. We'd already covered half the distance, so if all went well, we'd reach the Azure Shores in another half-month. What? Good gods, another half-month. Finian, the freckled youth, groaned, pulling at his hair. These days are terrible. I can't stand another single day in this place. Hey, cheer up, Cashin. Just 15 more days and you'll reach the Azure Shores. Delicious fruits, fluffy bread, not to mention a comfortable bed and a warm bath. It's all waiting for you. Even as the young man tried to encourage Cashin, the words seemed meant more for himself. Dong, dong. A rhythmic knock echoed as the carriage doors swung open, revealing Rory Blackwood. Clad in his armor and with his long sword at his side, Rory cut a handsome figure, a true warrior. Hey gentlemen, ladies, break time is here. If you need to stretch your legs, come outside. If not, please stay inside. It's rather dangerous out here. The interior of the carriage stirred with restless energy before a few red-faced girls exchanged glances and cautiously stepped out. I shrugged, then reached for my crimson crossblade. Let's go. As a member of the informal guard, I felt an obligation to protect these ladies, even if my role was limited to maintaining vigilance and shouting for the ironclad guard Silas if trouble arose. I won't go down this time, Cashin muttered from the side, a visible shiver running through him. Fine then, I gestured, leading the way out of the carriage. Landing softly on the grass, I couldn't help but stretch, savoring the brief comfort. A beautiful scenery stretched far beyond what my eyes could see. If not for the pervasive sense of danger, I might have truly appreciated the vista. How beautiful, Rory exclaimed, gazing at the setting sun. Beautiful, indeed, I murmured, but also dangerous. Danger is everywhere, my friend. Sickness, famine, war. The world is full of such perils, Rory said, clenching his sword. To us, this area is a threat to our lives, but to the Archons of Light, it's nothing more than their own garden. Are you suggesting that strength alone grants both freedom and safety? I asked. Exactly. Look at Cashin, he's already lost his courage. On this road to power, he lacks the spirit to face danger. Even if he were to safely arrive at the Ethelgard Scholarium, it's unlikely he'd become a magus. After all, studying magic is a treacherous path, 100 times more difficult than this wasteland. Rory threw a rock far into the plains. It's time to protect our beautiful treasures now. Watching Rory walk away, a faint smile touched my lips. Courage? For those chasing the truth, prudence is an even greater necessity. Cognitive core. Initialize scanning, I commanded mentally. Following the order, a three-dimensional scenery began to visualize within my mind, mapping the nearby vicinity. Within the light blue geographical image, a cluster of white stars appeared, symbolizing the students. Not a single one of them seemed to be hurt. The ironclad guard Silas, however, was a flashing red light. The cognitive core's analysis had recognized him as an existence capable of threatening its host. The final few carriages contained the archons of light. I didn't dare use my cognitive core to scan them, fearing detection of its energy and the trouble that might bring. Not long after, every potential source of danger in the vicinity materialized within my mind's map. Even a poisonous insect won't escape the cognitive core's scan. As of right now, this area is safe. This was a guarantee I could make. Although I was a nominal member of the Guard, I would never do anything to needlessly put myself in harm's way. With the cognitive core, I had a firm grasp of everything happening within a 10-kilometer radius. This was the greatest guarantee of our safety. Step direwolf pack. Perfect. I've used up all the viper bloom fruits again. This is a chance to gather some more. But I'm not sure if these plains even have that type of plant. I'm used to myself, gradually walking further from the party. Cognitive core. Check my body stats. A system prompt chimed in my mind. Beep. Strength, 1.6. Agility, 1.7. Vitality, 1.5. Status, healthy. The cognitive core transmitted the information. Not much improvement, I mused, a frown creasing my brow. Only around 0.1. Ever since everyone started resting in the carriage, I haven't been able to find a suitable place to cultivate the breathing techniques. Furthermore, the effects of the herbal concoctions are decreasing. According to the cognitive core's calculations, the optimized Crimson Cross discipline should allow me to increase my basic physical stats to 1.9 before hitting a natural limit. After that, I can only improve further by stimulating my inner life energy and becoming an ironclad guard. I kept an eye on the girls from the Sunstone Collective from afar, while also searching for useful herbs and materials. After a long search, I finally looked up in disappointment. It's as I feared. The conditions are too different. The viper bloom fruits aren't able to survive on these grassy plains. I can't even find any suitable substitute herbs. Hey, Alaric, it's time to get back to the carriage. Rory's loud shout carried across the distance. Got it, I called back. Wandering afar by myself was not only attention-grabbing, but also extremely dangerous. Reluctantly, I gave up on my search and started back towards the carriages. Just then, a system alert blared in my mind. Warning, warning, dangerous creatures are approaching. The cognitive core's mechanical voice rang out, and red warning words flashed before my eyes, seizing my attention instantly. Quick, show the map now. My facial expression remained impassive, but I quickened my pace, pushing my body to its limits. My right hand instinctively tightened around the hilt of my crimson crossblade. On the virtual map projected before my eyes, a large group of red dots was rapidly closing in on our convoy. They were slowly encircling and surrounding us. The cognitive core chimed, beep. According to databanks, these dangerous life forms have a 97.8% similarity to steppe direwolves. Steppe direwolves. My eyes narrowed as I recalled the data the cognitive core had gathered earlier. Steppe direwolf, a species of wolf inhabiting the blighted steppes. Savage and cruel, they primarily hunt in packs. Estimated strength, 2 to 3, agility, 3 to 4, vitality, 3 to 4. Such strength, these are definitely not creatures I, a mere provisional sentinel, can handle alone. My footsteps hastened once more. I rushed towards Rory, lowering my voice. We have company. Trouble is afoot. Rory glanced around at the surrounding crowd, noting that most of the students were still oblivious, lost in their own conversations. He quickly retrieved his water bottle, feigning a drink to mask our urgency. What's the situation? A pack of steppe direwolves, I said, my voice low and urgent. I noticed their tracks. I got it. Rory took a few gulps of water, then subtly gave out a series of hand signals. The youths from our team who had been chosen as escorts were momentarily startled, but their training kicked in. They remembered our pre-designated hand signals. Instantly, they began moving, gently ushering the younger girls ahead, whispering into their ears. The entire process was executed swiftly and silently. While some of the more discerning acolytes noticed something amiss and cautiously followed our retreat, most remained completely oblivious. Sometimes, when danger arose, the only thing you needed to do was ensure you ran faster than your companions. Let's go. Seeing that most of the members of the Sunstone Collective had successfully begun their retreat, Rory and I quickly followed suit. "Alaric, you're unexpectedly good at scouting," Rory remarked in a low voice as we ran. After all, we had spent enough time together for him to know I wouldn't lie about something like this. Although the members of the Sunstone Collective were quiet and retreating in an orderly manner to avoid alarming the others, some of the more discerning acolytes quickly noticed the shift and joined the retreat. Bang! Bang! A loud, piercing gong echoed. The Magus has sensed danger. All acolytes are to retreat back to the carriages. One of the black-robed arcane wardens' voices boomed, thundering in every acolyte's ears. The acolytes who had been resting on the grass were stunned into silence for a moment, then erupted into a panicked swarm, fleeing crazily for the carriages. "No need for hiding anymore. Let's run," Rory shouted, drawing his sword. By now, all the members of the Sunstone Collective had been alerted and were already a considerable distance ahead, the fastest among them already reaching the carriages. Ewo! At that moment, a long, drawn-out howl tore through the air, filled with ruthless bloodlust. From all directions, wolf howls echoed. Since their prey had discovered the stealth attack, the steppe direwolves would simply charge forth. Streak after streak of shadowy steppe direwolves charged after the fleeing acolytes. They were about 2 to 3 meters long, their speed so great that shimmering black afterimages trailed behind them. A pack of steppe direwolves, one of the acolytes at the back cried out in despair. Just as the cry escaped his lips, a steppe direwolf pounced onto a nearby girl. The heavy impact sent her tumbling to the ground. In the next instant, its merciless jaw, filled with razor-sharp teeth, bit down viciously, tearing out her throat. She died with a look of utter despair on her face. Some of the fleeing acolytes were drawn by the screams, turning their heads only to cry out in alarm as they witnessed the grisly sight, then accelerated their pace even further. Another young girl, her face streaked with tears, ran screaming, "Mummy! Mummy! I want my mummy!" These pitiful youngsters, I thought, they're already beginning to lose it. By now, I had reached the relative safety of the carriages and could take in the entire grim scene. Swoosh! Swoosh! Just then, 7 dark figures, ironclad guards, dashed out from among the carriages. Each wielded a massive, man-sized sword, which slashed through the air as they charged towards the pack of steppe direwolves. It's the ironclad guards. They're attacking, I thought to myself. These steppe direwolf stats averaged around 3 each, making them quite similar to an ironclad guard's base strength. However, humans possessed weapons and intelligence. Furthermore, the ironclad guards likely had secret skills that could greatly raise their potential, allowing them to burst forth with even greater power when necessary. If it was 1 versus 1, or even 1 versus 3, these steppe direwolves would definitely be no match for the ironclad guards. However, with the current numbers, a worried look creased my face as I watched the several hundred red dots encircling us on the cognitive core's map. Previously, even with just nearly 100 steppe direwolves, they managed to reach and even damage some of the carriages. With several hundred now, perhaps today we will finally see those mysterious magi show their abilities. PSH. One of the black-robed ironclad guards waved his immense blade, weaving a bright silver arc through the air as he cleaved a steppe direwolf in two. Haha. The ironclad guard licked the blood from his lips, a ferocious grin on his face. "Come on, my little precious." Thank you, sir." The little girl he'd saved stammered, tears still streaming down her cheeks. This was the same girl who had been calling out for her mother earlier. "Are you an idiot? Get back now." The ironclad guard's head didn't even turn as he charged forward, plunging back into the melee with the steppe direwolves. Only then did the little girl seem to reawaken to the gravity of the situation, scrambling back towards the carriages. "Hurry! Arrange the carriages in a circle for a defensive formation. Girls, stay behind. Boys, take up your swords and establish a perimeter." The ironclad guard Silas, who had remained at the campsite, bellowed. "All right." Rory was the first to shout a reply, leaping onto one of the carriages to direct the Sunstone Collective members. "It's time to fight for our lives." I grasped the hilt of my crimson cross blade firmly, muttering to myself. Looking at the chaotic scene before me, I noticed that the members of the Sunstone Collective had sustained the fewest losses, thanks to my timely warning. Besides a few who had tripped while running and sustained minor injuries, there were no deaths or serious wounds among them. In stark contrast, many of the other acolytes had been killed or injured. I saw that Kendrick's small group was now missing 2 youths, while the remaining few had all sustained various injuries. It seemed they had barely escaped with their lives. All right, we've rescued all the ones who can be rescued. Silas's body was covered in blood as he returned to the defensive formation. His eyes immediately found me, grasping my crimson crossblade with both hands, poised in a battle-ready stance. "Aren't you afraid?" Silas, the ironclad guard, asked. At this moment, being afraid won't be of any help, will it? I replied, my hands tightening around my sword. After all, even in my past life, such a bloody scene was far from common. Haha, these steppe direwolves are cunning and intelligent. As long as we let them know we're not an easy target, and that they'll sustain many losses to kill us, they'll definitely run away, Silas said, his tone surprisingly calm. I didn't know if the ironclad guard was merely trying to comfort me, but I breathed an obvious sigh of relief nonetheless. Oh, the few acolytes who had fallen earlier had perished by now, and with the fresh scent of blood in the air, the steppe direwolves went berserk, charging savagely towards the carriages. Here they come. Everyone be careful. We will try our best to protect you, but there are only so many of us, and we will inevitably miss some. At that point, you will have to fight for your lives. Silas's loud voice rang out. He waved his huge sword, taking his place on the front lines alongside the other ironclad guards. Kill! The ironclad guards shouted, and I could see a faint, internal light shining around their massive swords. As one huge blade cleaved down, the steppe direwolf charging in front had a gaping hole torn in its chest, causing it to roll back as hot blood sprayed into the air. For a time, the dozen or so ironclad guards stood like an immovable fortress, blocking the steppe direwolves. We should fight as well. We need to help the ironclad guards and reduce their load. Rory Blackwood walked up to me and said, Yes, if this continues for long, the ironclad guards will grow too exhausted to fight, and all of us will be in trouble. I nodded in agreement. Under Rory's leadership, all the men took up their swords and followed behind the ironclad guards, attacking the ferocious steppe direwolf pack from the side. Oh, the steppe direwolf howls were unceasing, and I was currently facing a 2-meter-long, huge steppe direwolf. As the steppe direwolf continued snarling, I could smell its pungent stench. Cognitive core. Scan the battlefield and determine the most efficient method of killing. A voice chimed in my head. Task established. Begin simulation. Begin assist mode. A light flashed in front of my eyes, and a panoramic, 3-dimensional image appeared before me. The steppe direwolf facing me finally launched an attack, and a gleaming claw speckled with blood slashed towards me, bringing along a hot wave of air. My cognitive core processed. Host is under attack. Most efficient method of dealing with it. Use the crimson crossblade to block it with a 50-degree angle to the right, then pierce. Huh, I shouted out as I circulated the breathing technique of the Crimson Cross discipline, concentrating my strength in my arm muscles as I followed the instructions, sweeping my sword to the right and striking the claw away. Bang, I felt a shock travel up my arm from the immense impact, making me feel as though I had struck a thick piece of metal. This steppe direwolf's strength is much higher than mine. If I keep doing that, I will be exhausted too quickly. I'll need to finish this fight quickly. Crimson Cross, lethal strike. I was shocked by its strength after using my Crimson Crossblade to strike away the steppe direwolf's claw. The Crimson Crossblade drew a brilliant arc immediately afterwards. Following the path calculated by the cognitive core, I pierced out towards the steppe direwolf opposing me. A piercing attack. The Crimson Cross discipline was a secret technique passed down through the Vance family, and its key point was to use powerful centrifugal force to strike at the enemy. At that moment, I used my waist to exert power. The Crimson Cross blade in my hands whistled as it pierced through the air and slammed towards the steppe direwolf. I felt the Crimson Cross blade pierce through its flesh, and it seemed as though the blade in my hands was firmly stuck in the steppe direwolf. The sheer impact of the blow caused me to tremble, and I tried to retract the Crimson Crossblade. I yanked my hands backwards. The Crimson Crossblade was pulled out violently, causing fresh blood to gush out wildly. The steppe direwolf opposing me screamed miserably. It turned out that my sword attack earlier had just happened to pierce into the steppe direwolf's foreleg, its weakness. The steppe direwolf hopped backwards in retreat, and one claw seemed to have already been rendered useless. Seeing the steppe direwolf escaping, my eyes flashed once, but I didn't pursue it. Most of the pressure has been taken on by the ironclad guards. If I run out of the defensive perimeter to chase it, that would be tantamount to committing suicide. Anyway, an injured steppe direwolf will not be able to attack us again. It'll probably die after a while, or end up as its companion's meal. Well done, Rory praised loudly from close by. At this moment, Rory also had traces of blood on his body. His attack posture was confident and elegant, looking as if he was performing rather than killing. However, he still carried an unparalleled level of strength. He was actually going up against 2 steppe direwolves and was still not at a disadvantage. The secret sword techniques passed down through noble families really aren't ordinary. I thought casually before I once again directed my gaze towards the steppe direwolf pack in front of me. The tragic fighting between man and steppe direwolf continued on for half an hour. The sun slowly set, and darkness descended upon the plains. At that moment, the eyes of the steppe direwolves were giving off an aquamarine glow. The entire campground had an eerie feel as it seemed to be surrounded by a crowd of aquamarine eyes. Ha! I gasped for breath. I now looked as if I had been fished out of a pool of blood. My face was still covered with it, but I lacked the time to even wipe it off. Even with the cognitive core allowing me to use the most efficient methods to kill or injure the steppe direwolves, I still felt heavily drained from the effort. If even I'm like this, there's no need to speak about the other acolytes. Only the ironclad guards still have energy to spare, but even they will probably be unable to last much longer. In this situation, why haven't the Archons of Light acted yet? I glanced over and saw that there was an empty space amidst the female acolytes at the center of the campsite. 3 Archons of Light were sitting there, giving off chilling auras. None of the surrounding acolytes dared to be within 3 meters of them. As for the steppe direwolves surrounding the defensive ring, they had already lost 1/3 of their number. However, the number of defending acolytes at the front line had also greatly decreased. Most had been injured and were under the care of the girls behind. If I were the steppe direwolf alpha, the current losses would be enough to make me give up. There should be one final wave of vicious attacks remaining. My sword flickered as it cut the leg of a steppe direwolf. At the same time, I took the opportunity to pull out several berries. I tossed them into my mouth and chewed twice before swallowing. These were the useful plants I had collected along the journey. They could quickly replenish my body's energy, but I was running out of them. A woo! Shrill steppe direwolf calls sounded, but this time, they carried a different meaning. The steppe direwolf pack became more frenzied as it heard the calls. It charged forward without any regard for their lives. It's here, the final wave. My eyes shifted. I brandished the crimson crossblade in my hand as I advanced. Bang! I felt a great force run through my hand, and the crimson crossblade almost flew out of my hands. The steppe direwolves before us seemed to be twice as big as the others. I relaxed the muscles in my numbed arm. Cognitive core scanned the steppe direwolves in front of me. My cognitive core processed steppe direwolves. Strength 2.3, agility 4.1, vitality 3.1. Description: in a steppe direwolf pack, there will always be those whose bodies are significantly larger than those of the same race. These will be chosen to be the bodyguards for the alpha of the wolves. They usually have greater strength than the others of the same race, and at the same time, undying loyalty to the alpha of the wolves. This was a paragraph that the previous Bratty Alaric had read from a random atlas at some point, and it was now retrieved by the cognitive core. How amazing! Looks like the steppe direwolf alpha is also making a big investment this time, I thought, before going forward to tussle with the huge steppe direwolves again. I had been a scientist in my previous world, and had thought that I was no longer hot-blooded. But now, being in this primitive society and killing the steppe direwolf pack made me feel as if something had aroused in my body, making my blood boil. This is unlike the peace in my previous world. These beast-like instincts are needed for a being's survival, I realized. Haha, come. I had already trained the breathing technique of the Vance family to a very profound level. Now, I only needed the enlightenment gained from killing in order to stimulate my life force and become a true ironclad guard. Kill. My eyes had a hint of red to them as I began to fight madly with the steppe direwolf. At this moment, I finally let go completely. In every sword stroke, I vented the dread of my death in the previous world and the unease of entering a foreign world. My eyes flashed as I fought the steppe direwolf, seemingly having comprehended something. The crimson crossblade in my hands hacked downwards, bringing a silver light with it. As it slashed towards the ground, my body twisted, and strength was exerted from my powerful waist muscles. With the great centrifugal force of the crimson crossblade, I made another horizontal slash. The crimson cross blade itself seemed to be releasing a dim light. The two slashes seemed to fuse together, forming a radiant cross. Crimson Cross Discipline, Secret Killing Move, Crimson Cross, Lethal Strike. A killing move was something that had the essence of several killing techniques inside, using a profound skill level to raise one's killing ability. Although it couldn't compare to the Ironclad Guard's secret skills that increased all stats, provisional sentinels who possessed a killing move could still threaten a true Ironclad Guard with life force. The Crimson Cross blade viciously slashed the steppe direwolf's body and opened a large wound in the shape of a cross. The steppe direwolf whined as fresh blood sprayed out continuously. Now, my eyes shone as I charged forward. Advance. Jump slash. The Crimson Cross blade swung past, and the steppe direwolf's huge head was sent flying. The surrounding steppe direwolves jumped in fright, and their attack slowed down. Even the surrounding Ironclad guards looked over in shock. I felt a sense of contentment as I stepped on the giant steppe direwolf's head, and I couldn't help but roar. "Ho, I've already vented, so it's time to retreat." After roaring, I didn't choose to go forward to kill again, but instead turned around to return to the defensive perimeter. This allowed a well-rested defender to take over my position. I'm not an idiot. The killing move just now was too exhausting, and I've already vented out all the negative emotions in my heart. I should save some strength for self-protection. I received a bottle from a young acolyte with trembling hands and began to drink with big gulps. By drinking water, I managed to conceal my eyes, which were exuding intelligence. I have killed the highest number of steppe direwolves besides the Ironclad guards. With this, no one can force me to enter the battlefield again. Next, I must maintain my strength and witness the Archons of Light's actions at the same time. Based on the collected figures, the cognitive core calculated that there was a 98% chance of a slip-up by the Ironclad guards. The steppe direwolf pack would thus break through the perimeter, and casualties would appear among the acolytes. At that point, no matter how much the Archons of Light wanted to stay out of this, they would have to act. A woo. With the non-stop howling from the steppe direwolf alpha hidden amidst the pack, the steppe direwolf pack's charge became more aggressive. The ones that appeared now were the giant bodyguard steppe direwolves. The throat of the frontmost acolyte was torn out, and he toppled over. "We can't wait any longer. Activate your secret skills," the Ironclad guard Silas shouted. At that moment, the Ironclad guards released crackling sounds as their muscles continuously expanded. At first glance, their overgrown muscles made them look like small giants. It's appeared, the secret skills of the Ironclad guards. My eyes didn't blink. Cognitive core, collect data. A voice chimed, beep. Task established, data collection in progress. Ironclad guard secret skill, strength type. After activation, vitality, strength, and defense increase, agility decreases. In the middle of data collection for circulation path of life energy, 43% recorded. Remaining information insufficient, unable to analyze. Looking at the data scrolling before my eyes, I felt some regret. I still can't understand how the life force of Ironclad guards is activated. But if I had an Ironclad guard level guinea pig to dissect, then I might just be able to understand. As for the Ironclad guards who had activated their secret skills, not only did their muscle strengths increase, their defenses seemed to have increased as well. The giant bodyguard steppe direwolves still needed to be avoided, but the Ironclad guards used their great swords to hack at the forehead of the normal steppe direwolves despite being cut by their claws. But with the increase in giant bodyguard steppe direwolves, a steppe direwolf had finally managed to slip through a gap and charge into the crowd of acolytes. Save me. Mama. Papa. I don't want to die yet." The sound of various cries and screams resonated through the air, and the campsite turned into utter chaos. In the end, they're just a bunch of 13 and 14-year-old kids. I sighed. A woo. As if by chain reaction, another giant steppe direwolf broke through their defenses, landing within the area occupied by the Sunstone Collective. "Alaric, come and kill it with me." Rory's neck was wrapped up in gauze. It wasn't known which noble family's young noblewoman wrapped it. Not only was it thickly wrapped up, it was even knotted in a bow, the sight making me want to laugh out loud. "No need. Give me the crossbow." This. Rory removed the crossbow from his back and passed it to me. "I'm afraid there's no use. These mongrels have thick skin and flesh. If you can't hit their weak points. Oh, goddammit." My cognitive core projected. Calculation of wind speed and temperature in progress. Calculation of trajectory complete. Following the cognitive core's calculated trajectory, I pulled the trigger of the crossbow. Whoosh! The powerful crossbow bolt flew out, and the strong recoil caused my arm to feel slightly numb. Pooh! The crossbow arrow entered through the left eye of the steppe dire wolf and exited out of its right eye. The steppe dire wolf howled twice, crumpling to the floor. The advantage I have with the cognitive core in this kind of high-accuracy work is really too great. A crossbow isn't like a bow. All you have to do is aim and pull the trigger. It's so convenient. I compared the differences between me swinging around the crimson crossblade before and using the crossbow. It looks like I'm more suited towards long-distance attacks. This is also much safer. It's just that I still have no idea how to activate the life force of ironclad guards. Could it be that experiencing a truly tough battle is required? I hadn't used a crossbow earlier. The first reason for this was to vent. The second was to make an attempt at activating the life force of ironclad guards. Unfortunately, I possessed the cognitive core as one of my cards and had never been forced into a desperate life or death situation. Naturally, I was unable to experience the feeling of the life force that was activated in a desperate situation. Kalen, good job. Rory clapped me on the shoulder, his voice loud over the chaos. From today onwards, this crossbow is yours. Thanks then, I smiled, securing the weapon. Even if Rory hadn't said anything, I would still have tried to obtain it. Oh, Kalen. Kalen has killed dire wolves. Lord Kalen. Lord Kalen, quickly save us. At this point, more steppe dire wolves charged into the campsite, and acolytes cried out towards me. With Rory's prior preparations, the losses on our side had been the least. With Rory and me, two experts who were provisional sentinels, it was considered the safest place apart from the area around the Archons of Light. Julian sucked in huge breaths as he used a sword to block a steppe dire wolf that was leaping forward. A huge force was transmitted over, causing the crimson crossblade in his hands to fly away. I am the successor of my house. I still haven't enjoyed a lot of things. How could I die here? Julian roared. Of his surrounding comrades, two had already died. Among the remaining people, if they weren't dead, then they had already escaped. At this moment, shouts of Lord Kalen could be heard, causing his eyes to shine. That's right. The Sunstone Collective still has strength, and Kalen was so impressive just now. He can definitely save me. Julian didn't hesitate anymore and began to run in my direction. Kalen, Lord Kalen, save me. Well, I readied the crossbow. Hearing the sound and taking a look, I thought, it's Julian after all. The current Julian looked embarrassing. Not only had his crimson crossblade been dropped, his whole body carried wounds, and he was being closely pursued by a steppe dire wolf. It's a pity. You've looked for the wrong person. Did you really think I would be so magnanimous? A grin tugged at my lips. I mused internally. With the Archons of Light here, I don't dare to take my chances and secretly kill someone. But if it's only not being able to save them in time, no one will have a reason to find trouble over that. I looked at Julian, allowing a brilliant smile to touch my face. He'll save me. Definitely. Julian saw my smile, and his heart relaxed. He continuously encouraged himself, increasing his running speed. Oh, no. At that moment, Julian despairingly saw me shoot the crossbow, dealing with a steppe dire wolf on another side. How could you? How could you do this? Julian's mind went blank for a moment, and he tripped on a rock, falling onto the ground. The steppe dire wolf behind him shot forward. Its teeth bit down and blood began to flow nonstop. Thanks. On the other side, the girl I'd saved ran to me to thank me. Thank you. No need for thanks. I smiled. On the other side, Alara looked at me with her face red and lowered her head. There was a whistling sound, and Rory looked at Alara, directing a you-understand gaze towards me. The situation is already like this, but your personality hasn't changed, Rory. I said, rolling my eyes. Even if I fall into the abyss of death, you can't stop the yearning I have for beautiful romances. Rory used the tone of a martyr, speaking as if he was unafraid of death. You won't die. The Archons of Light are about to make their move. I rolled my eyes. Even though the field was in chaos, the giant steppe dire wolves seemed to have an amazing sixth sense. They had never bothered the three Archons of Light, forming a strange circle. And amidst the noise, I could still use the five senses that were strengthened by the cognitive core to catch the conversation between the Archons of Light. Perhaps they themselves had not even concealed it. Corvus, are we still not making our move? The acolytes have too many casualties, and that will lower our rating. A woman's voice sounded. Relax, relax. I've been counting. Up until now, 10 have died so far. The limit hasn't been passed yet. A slightly cynical voice traveled over. It was a man's voice. But it's still reaching the limit. Act quickly. I still need to determine the stability model for this technique. Damn it. The negative energy here is simply too high. It's simply impossible to complete the construction of the Tokurwuri. Then I'll do it. The Archon of Light, who hadn't spoken before, stood up. These mysterious magi. The mysterious people rumored to be able to manipulate the forces of nature. My eyes stared at the Archon of Light. All of you stupid and lowly beasts. You actually dare to bother the rest of the venerated Lord Archons. Only death can be your eternal home. Mazurda, Karachi. With the chanting sounds of the Archon of Light, my cognitive core madly sounded out. Alert! Alert! Discovered radiation source. Discovered negative energy field. Suggestion for host to immediately evacuate far away. The bright red words were so obvious, but I wasn't frightened into retreating at all. I only repeatedly recalled the chanting of the Archon of Light. This doesn't seem to be the language used on the continent, but an ancient one instead. It seems like quite the tongue twister. Do magi use this kind of language to chant? I pondered, and as the Archon of Light stood up, the surrounding steppe dire wolves retreated, as if they had met some kind of natural enemy. Secondary energy fireball. After the chant was completed, a floating fireball appeared in the man's hand out of nowhere. According to the calculations of my cognitive core, this fireball was at least 1,000 degrees and was actually causing the surrounding space to distort faintly. The fireball left a blazing trail and landed on the steppe direwolf's heart. Boom. Not good. Quickly crouched down. I shouted loudly. Unfortunately, it was already too late. It didn't matter whether it was the acolytes or the steppe direwolves in the surroundings. Everyone was sent toppling over. A loud explosion resounded, bringing with it a wave of heat. Puff. Pooey pooey. I got up from the ground, hurriedly spitting out the soil and grass in my mouth. At this moment, I was covered in dirt and looked like a person who had just crawled out of a muddy pit. According to the cognitive core's calculations, that area should have been where the head of the steppe direwolves was positioned. SSS. I climbed onto the horse carriage. I looked in the direction of the area attacked by the magus just now and couldn't help but suck in a sharp breath. I could only see that where the fireball landed, there was now an additional pit of fire that was 3 meters in length and width and 2 meters deep. As for the steppe direwolves in that area, they had already become burnt charcoal. The steppe direwolves whimpered before quickly escaping. He has the body of a human and is able to attack to this extent. This is the strength of a magus. I looked at the Archon of Light, my eyes burning with passion. The strength of a magus. I must obtain it. Quickly, clean up the battlefield, the Archon of Light said, ignoring the fervent gazes of the surrounding acolytes. He returned to his original place, where the 2 other magi were. When he passed by Julian's corpse, he stopped. He took a small golden pouch from Julian's bosom and placed it in his own bosom. This seems to be the bag Julian used to store magic crystals. My pupils shrank. Evaluation. Boundary. Magic crystals. My mind raced. It looks like these magi received a task, which was why they helped escort us acolytes. It seems there was a death count quota that would have lowered their evaluation and decreased their rewards if they had passed it. And it seems that I had slightly underestimated the value of magic crystals before. These Archons of Light let the acolytes die, most likely because they had planned to take away the magic crystals of the dead acolytes. Luckily, now that the dead acolytes have reached the danger limit already, we'll be safer from here on. After thinking it through clearly, my face turned ashen. This is the world of magi? Logical to the point of cold-bloodedness. Cold to the point of apathy. Everyone, quickly pack up so we can continue our journey. The smell of blood here will attract other predators. The ironclad guard Silas took off the outer clothes that had been torn due to the activation of the secret skill. The sweat on his face flowed non-stop, and he was gasping for air, looking slightly weakened. My eyes flashed with light. It looks like a price needs to be paid to activate the secret skill for ironclad guards. Hey, Kalen, look. Just as I was about to enter the carriage, Rory snuck over and surreptitiously pointed to the side. On another black-colored horse carriage, Princess Lyra was hugging her legs as she sat. Her shoulder had bloody marks on it, and she looked like she had just gone through a crying session. Julian has always been Princess Lyra's #1 royal warden. Now that that group is almost completely dead, Princess Lyra's situation isn't looking very good. Rory said next to my ear, with an expression that implied my chance had come. I've already lost interest in her. Anyway, we're in such danger. Can't you control your lower half a little? I didn't really know what to say. I pointed to Rory's collar, and on those clothes were marks from a girl's lipstick. I really didn't know when this beast had been able to fool around. Hee hee. My brother, it's only in this kind of dangerous moment that we provisional sentinels can show our might. And girls will always show goodwill towards the man who saved them. This is the most basic of techniques. Rory took out something that was similar to a handkerchief from his bosom, smugly showing his harvest. Can you see? Just today, I've already won the goodwill of 3 ladies. Yeah, I had nothing to say. When thinking of the original Alaric's Playboy past, I mused. It seems that the previous Alaric always used force when he met a girl he liked, seriously. Alright, it's time to set off. I saw the ironclad guards gather the acolyte corpses together. They took out several magic crystals and passed them to the Archons of Light, before hurriedly changing the topic. The Blighted Steppes is indeed a place no ordinary person can cross. I sat in the carriage as my body constantly jolted up and down. The tiny window opened as a golden ray of sunshine peeked in, giving the interior of the carriage a trace of liveliness. It had already been over 10 days since the attack of the steppe direwolf's pack. During these 10 days, the traveling party encountered an increasing amount of danger as they ventured deeper into the steppes. Only now did I find out that the steppe direwolves were merely at the bottom of the food chain. There were still many more cunning and vicious predators above them. On the way, I saw several animal colonies whose numbers were not inferior to that of the steppe direwolf pack from before. Besides the steppe direwolves, there were flocks of huge blackbirds that were several meters tall and even enormous monsters, dozens of meters long, which looked like saber-toothed tigers, except their bodies were like tiny mountains. Just their aura alone caused me to feel suffocated. Fortunately, the deaths of the acolytes seemed to have reached the limit, and the Archons of Light had started to act. Not only did they set up magical defensive arrays on the carriages, they also directly stepped forward to disperse the animal groups that attacked. Through these measures, a large number of casualties was prevented. The most dangerous time was when they confronted the monster that was dozens of meters long. Thankfully, that small mountain-like monster seemed to possess some intelligence and knew that the Archons of Light were not to be trifled with. It quickly left after a short confrontation and did not unleash any attacks, causing everyone in the traveling party to sigh in relief. It's time. I took out my pocket watch and looked at the clock hand. It had already reached the 3 o'clock position. I stood up and opened the front door of the carriage. A moist breeze blew towards me, bringing a salty smell with it. It smelled very fresh and clean, and I could not help but deeply breathe in a few times before seating myself beside Silas. Good afternoon, Sir Silas. Good afternoon. Such a courteous, noble gentleman. Silas did not turn as he directly handed over the horsewhip and reins to me. Good timing. I need to rest for a while. I chuckled as I received the horsewhip and skillfully urged on the carriage. Silas leaned to one side as he unclasped a bottle at his waist. When he opened it, a strong alcohol smell floated out, and as he lowered his head to take a gulp, his eyes narrowed in joy. We are about to reach our destination. Based on the fact that you've helped me drive the carriage for a month, I can answer 2 of your questions. I was just enjoying the view on both sides when I heard Silas's voice sound out. All right, I lightly smiled. I had specially tried to get into Silas's good books, and this was one of the reasons why I had done so. Then my first question is, what will there be at our destination? Some temporary tents set up by the various Ethelgard scholariums. Over there, all of you can freely choose an academy to join based on your interests, and also undergo an even more accurate aptitude test. Silas looked a little impatient as he answered. These things will be explained by the great Magi when we arrive. Don't waste your opportunity. An accurate aptitude test? I was stunned. Soon after, I recalled that they had only managed to identify my talent in magic initially before being sent onto the carriage by the Baron. As for how good my talent was in comparison to others, I did not have the slightest inkling. Temporary tents set up by the Ethelgard scholariums? Looks like this is similar to the school recruitments of my previous world. I wonder what the requirements are. I silently thought to myself. Alright then, my second question. In your heart, what is a magus? I asked my second question. A magus? They control enormous power and pursue the truth, with an equivalent exchange as their doctrine. Brat, don't daydream of obtaining any free benefits from a magus, or else the flames of desire will gush out from the abyss and punish your soul. Silas's face twitched as if he had thought of an unfortunate event, while his voice became extremely low. Pursuit of truth, equivalent exchange? I like it. The corners of my mouth formed a smile. Silas had apparently said all he intended to. He took 2 deep gulps of the strong liquor, then lowered his head, eyes closed. Within 10 minutes, his heavy snoring filled the carriage. I stared blankly at the unchanging scenery before us. The plains were undeniably beautiful, in their own way, but after a solid month of the same monotonous view, I was beginning to feel a distinct urge to vomit. This is it. As our carriage rumbled onward, the distant green receded, replaced by an expansive blue horizon and a relentless, powerful wind. We've finally arrived, Silas announced, his eyes snapping open. He looked at me. The Styx shore? We've reached our destination. As we drew closer to the sea, A small, town-like settlement materialized at the edge of my vision. A sprawling camp dominated the landscape, a chaotic collection of tents, large and small. Dozens of carriages, much like the one I'd been driving, dotted the periphery. The majority of the inhabitants were acolytes, youngsters around 13 or 14, their faces alight with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. I quickly estimated hundreds, easily filling the entire camp. Figures constantly emerged from the tents, their expressions a kaleidoscope of emotions. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the intermediate stop on our journey, the Styx shore. Here, you will choose your future scholarium, and then return to your chosen institution with your designated teachers to begin your magical studies. Our carriage shuddered to a halt. 3 figures in stark white robes, luminary envoys by their manner, emerged, gathering the mass of acolytes. Now, the leader, Corvus, began, his voice cutting through the chatter. Follow me into the campgrounds. Here, you will choose your scholarium. Remember, you are free to explore all the various institutions, but once you sign a contract, there is no turning back. Any who renege will be hung from the camp's gate. Corvus's chilling words sent a ripple of unease through the young acolytes. Haha, Corvus, you lot are quite late today. A booming voice cut in. A portly man, also clad in white robes, lumbered out from the camp. Don't scare these adorable newbies so much, he chided. We encountered some difficulties along the way, Corvus replied, his tone flat. All right, newbies, follow me into the camp. The portly man, Malachi, spoke with Corvus and the others for a moment longer before turning to shout at me and the rest of the new arrivals. You can call me Malachi, from the esteemed Ivory Bastion Scholarium. Trust me, if you're choosing an institution, the Ivory Bastion is unequivocally your best choice, Malachi declared, ushering the acolytes into the camp. Inside, a cacophony of sounds assaulted my ears, instantly bringing to mind the bustling marketplaces of my former world. Corvus and the other 2 luminary envoys seemed to have other duties, quickly dispersing from our group. The surroundings buzzed with activity, primarily due to hundreds of acolytes just like us. Some had formed small huddles, others moved in and out of the various tents. Malachi led me and the remaining 40 or so acolytes to the center of the campgrounds. There, a massive tent of pristine white stood, adorned with peculiar flower-like patterns that seemed to be both decorative and vaguely calligraphic. I couldn't help but peer at it intently. Cognitive core. Begin scan. A soft beep sounded in my mind. Forming image, the core responded. Yet, in the generated image, the white tint appeared utterly blank, as if the intricate patterns had never existed. How could this be? I muttered, staring at the tint again, disbelief warring with my analytical mind. With each passing second, the patterns on the tint seemed to warp and twist, almost alive. Hee, ha, GG. Strange whispers slithered into my ears. The ambient light around me distorted, and when I glanced at my own hands, my arm appeared unnaturally elongated, slender to the point of being skeletal. Kalen, what's wrong? A firm pat on my shoulder jolted me. My entire body shivered, and I blinked, snapping back to reality. Around me, the acolytes were still attentively listening to Malachi's booming voice, and the world had seemingly reverted to its normal, undistorted state. Had it not been an illusion? A jolt of genuine fear, a rarity for me, shot through me. Cognitive core reproduced the situation I was in earlier. A soft beep, a pale blue light display flickered before my eyes, replaying the sequence of distorted images. Anomaly in cerebral vessel, immediate inspection proposed, the cognitive core stated. Anomaly found in host condition. Staying away is advised. Then, host body has returned to normal. The torrent of data confirmed it wasn't a trick of my mind. Phew, I wiped a bead of cold sweat from my brow. Magi, were they always this enigmatic, this unsettling? A lingering tremor of fear persisted. Kalen, your complexion is terrible. Are you ill? Rory Blackwood asked from beside me. No matter who, their expression wouldn't be any better if they'd just experienced that. No, nothing. Where did Malachi stop? I quickly deflected. Oh, we need to fill out a form, then take the aptitude test. After that, it's free time, and we can choose our scholarium autonomously. Rory explained. Malachi's booming voice continued. Because you arrived a day late, you have only 1 day left. Within this period, you must choose a scholarium to practice magic, or you'll have to wait until next year. Now, all of you, line up and take a form from me, one by one, then proceed for the test. Malachi instructed. He sat behind a simple white table, pulling out a stack of sheepskin forms and setting them down. The line advanced swiftly. Soon, it was my turn. Fill in your details on this form. Then enter the tent and follow the instructions within. I took the form, noting its coarse sheepskin texture. The required information was minimal: name, age, birthplace, and a few other basic fields. I picked up the goose feather quill on the table and quickly completed the form. The faint, red-inked flower patterns embossed on the sheepskin were surprisingly intricate. I never thought the original Alaric Vance's handwriting was this legible for a noble rake, I mused. Finishing, I took the sheepskin paper and stepped inside the white tent. Come over, an ancient voice commanded. The tent's interior was surprisingly spacious, containing only a white-haired old woman seated on a black chair and a crystal ball resting on a simple table. Right. Why am I suddenly thinking of those stereotypical divination witches? Hello, I greeted the old woman. Bring the form here, she instructed, her voice still frosty. Clearly, she wasn't one for pleasantries. Alaric, is it? Place your hands on the crystal ball. I obeyed, placing both hands flat on the crystal ball. Icy cold. Vibrations. A peculiar tactile sensation radiated from my fingertips. My head throbbed, as if a glass rod was stirring my brain. Simultaneously, the crystal ball before me began to emit a faint, internal glow. Very good. Don't let go, the old woman urged, her gaze fixed intently on the crystal ball. As the pain intensified, the crystal ball in my hands brightened further. No, no more. I gritted my teeth, but the agony, sharp enough to split my skull, forced my grip to loosen uncontrollably. Okay, so this is your level. The old woman nodded, taking out a goose feather quill and making a note on my form. We categorize acolyte aptitude into 5 grades, with the first being the worst and the 5th the best. You are a 3rd grade, a mid-tier aptitude. As she spoke, she twisted a ring on her finger and pressed it against the sheepskin, leaving behind a strange mark that momentarily pulsed with light. My examination here is concluded. Proceed to the area behind me. Next. With that, she waved me away. Seeing a young girl with freckles, Piper, entering the tent, I took my sheepskin form, offered a quick thanks, and lifted the hanging curtain, moving to the next stage of the process. This next section of the tent was equally spacious, and in its center sat a white-bearded old man. Given the layout, there should only be 2 tests. Quite straightforward, I mused, as I took a seat before the old man and handed him my form. 3rd grade? Not bad at all, the white-bearded old man mumbled, stroking his chin. All right, now for your elemental affinity test. He rapped his knuckles on the tabletop, and it split open, revealing a black basin that slowly rose from its core. The basin wasn't smooth, appearing to be crafted from rough stone, and within it, a viscous liquid metal, like mercury, swirled. Carefully look into the water. The old man's voice, now tinged with authority, drew my attention. I couldn't help but fix my gaze entirely on the center of the basin. As I focused, the liquid metal began to swirl, forming a continuous whirlpool, like an abyss opening at its base. Now, tell me, what do you see? He prompted. My eyes felt a little glazed. Shadows. I began, my voice distant, in a black whirlpool, and there are red spots near the outer circumference. Anything else? He pressed. There are also green specks of light in the surrounding area. Is there a lot of green? Not at all. Very little. Okay. The old man snapped his fingers, and I jolted, my mind clearing instantly. What happened to me? Your test is complete. Regarding elemental affinities, you possess the highest affinity with the dark and shadow elements, followed by the fire element. You also have a mere smidgen of affinity with the plant element. As the old man spoke, he rapidly filled in the remaining sections of the form and pressed his handprint onto it. Allow me to offer some advice, he continued. Magi are theoretically capable of wielding all forms of elemental energy. However, only by pursuing the path with which you have the strongest affinity can you truly achieve your utmost potential. The old man handed the form back to me. All right, your test is complete. Exit through the back and begin choosing your scholarium. I bowed curtly, then exited the tent. As I lifted the back canopy, a sudden shaft of sunlight bathed me. Cognitive core, reproduce the state I was in earlier. I commanded internally. Unknown interference detected. Host entered a state of hypnosis, the core replied. As expected, my face darkened. I exhaled a helpless sound. Thankfully, the other party harbored no ill intentions otherwise. Deep in my heart, my thirst for genuine power intensified, burning brighter than ever. Hey, Kalen, Rory Blackwood's voice cut through my thoughts. You finished your aptitude test too? Yeah, I nodded, waving the sheepskin form in my hand. I finished too, hee hee. I, Rory Blackwood, am a genius with a 4th grade aptitude. Rory crowed, his face split by an excessively smug grin. I'm not entirely familiar with the grading system for acolytes, I admitted. Could you elaborate? Rory's family, after all, held significantly more sway than the Vance family, granting him access to many more secrets regarding the Magi. Of course, this is common knowledge, honestly. No matter which scholarium you enter, someone will eventually tell you, Rory explained. Acolyte aptitudes are ranked based on their likelihood of advancing to a full-fledged magus, categorized into 5 grades. 5th grade is the highest, boasting a 90% chance of becoming a magus. 4th grade is slightly inferior, but still a 50% chance. And I, Rory Blackwood, am a genius at that level. Haha, my father will be absolutely thrilled. Rory digressed, clearly overcome with excitement. And the rest? Hurry up and tell me. I nudged Rory's shoulder, pulling him back to the topic. Oh right, I mentioned up to 4th grade. Below that is 3rd grade, which offers a 10% chance of becoming a magus. 2nd grade drops to a mere 2 to 3%, and 1st grade is the absolute worst, with a 1% or even a 0.1% chance. Basically, only 3rd grade and above truly have a chance. 1st and 2nd grade acolytes are, for all intents and purposes, doomed to remain acolytes their entire lives. So that's the situation, I thought. My grade is middle ranked. No scholarium should reject me, but they won't exactly consider me a star recruit either. I analyzed my position dispassionately. What about elemental affinity? I pressed. Elemental affinity determines a magus's future path, you know. Some magi can manipulate lightning, others fire, and some even frost. These are all distinct choices of specialization. While a magus can theoretically cast any elemental spell, those with the highest affinity will not only cast faster, but also wield significantly more power. If a fire element magus, for instance, tried to cast a water spell, they'd not only expend far more spiritual energy, but the spell's potency would be severely diminished. A grand water pool summoning might end up as nothing more than a pathetic water ball. All in all, your elemental affinity determines your path as a magus, and your aptitude determines how far you can walk down that path. Rory concluded with a flourish. That last sentence makes perfect sense, I observed, repeating his exact words, but it doesn't sound like it came from you. Haha, you caught me, Rory admitted, scratching his head sheepishly. Those are the words of a traveling magus. I found them in my father's study. Oh right, I finally managed to dig up why those arcane wardens were so cold and distant during our journey. Rory exclaimed, clearly itching to share the gossip. The strength of a magus, even a mere acolyte, isn't something an ironclad guard can easily contend with. Didn't you find the arcane warden's behavior during our journey a little strange? There certainly was something strange about it, I conceded, nodding. Could it be they possessed some hidden background? I conjectured. No, Rory shook his head emphatically. My dear brother, you're guessing in the completely wrong direction. These arcane wardens are actually an experiment of a magus. An experiment? My eyes widened. In my former world, conducting live human experimentation had always been a taboo for the scientific community, and even if any were done, they were shrouded in secrecy. But here, they had executed such a thing so brazenly and openly. In the process of the experiment, this batch of experimental subjects had already sustained an overdose of arcane radiation and wouldn't live more than several years. That's why they were used as expendables, to escort acolytes like us. This was the reason? I thought of Silas's pale face and silently nodded my head. Earlier, the cognitive core had scanned and detected traces of arcane radiation, but the radiation discovered on the Archons of Light had been 100 times more concentrated. Naturally, I'd assumed there was no real effect. For us Magi, we will be acolytes at least. What Ironclad Guard wouldn't want to prostrate themselves and hope that we pick them to serve us in the future. The only ones who wouldn't take us seriously are those who won't live for longer than a few days. Rory said with a touch of regret. His face was indignant. It seemed as an heir to a large noble family. He was displeased with the rude manners of the arcane wardens from before. I heard that for the guys from the west, not only had they been treated like young masters by the Ironclad Guards along the journey, they'd even slept with some of them. Rory's dissatisfaction only lasted a moment before it turned into a vulgar expression. Slept with some of them? I was a little more awake. There are also female ironclad guards. Of course, although female ironclad guards are generally quite muscular, a few have practiced some unique techniques, so they still look pretty good. Also, a female ironclad guard stamina is rather good and can withstand all kinds of treatment, especially during intercourse, her pair of toned thighs wrapping around you. That feeling is too wonderful for words. Rory's current character was that of a lecherous swine. I recalled my memories. The brat of the past, Alaric, was also a playboy, but he obviously couldn't compete with Rory, who was from such a large noble family, so he had indeed not touched a pretty female ironclad guard before. There were several female ironclad guards under the Baron, but they all had bulging muscles, which made me feel quite revolted. Shaking my head, I didn't wish to discuss the contents of this matter with Rory. I understand now. Let's go and choose our scholarium. This, my father has already chosen for me. I'll be attending the Ivory Bastion Scholarium. My family has a relationship with one of the senior magi inside. Why don't you come with me too? Rory extended an invitation. I was a little tempted, but seeing the ring on my neck, I still hesitated. Earlier, that Magus never said which scholarium the ring could help me get into. What if it turns into a restriction instead? No, I wish to walk and look around more. I declined politely. All right then, I'm going to carry out the procedures. You can come to the area for the Ivory Bastion Scholarium to look for me. Rory waved his hands and squeezed into the crowd. Where should I go? I don't care anymore. Let's check out the Scholaria first. I strolled aimlessly around the camp and saw all sorts of interesting tents with strange shapes and sizes. Some were like a giant mushroom, where a small fan-shaped door opened in the middle, and some might very well have used some sort of strange horned devil skull, where the acolytes could walk into the tent through the devil's ferocious mouth as though they were stepping into a haunted house. And at the front of all these different buildings were marked with words. It is the language of the mainland. That's still fine. I took a look, saw some of the Scholarium names, and memorized them: the Ivory Bastion Scholarium, Cindermore Scholarium, Marshlight Conservatory. Under the various Scholarium names, there were details such as specialization areas and famous magi for the acolytes to consider. All these are for us to choose a scholarium according to our elemental affinities. I nodded my head. My elemental affinity with the shadow and dark elements is the highest, fire is secondary, and lastly, the plant element is the most negligible, unless I want to stay as an acolyte my whole life. And I took down the Magus ring that had been hanging around my neck. Cognitive core, scan the patterns on the ring, and compare them with images of the Scholaria I passed by before. A system prompt chimed in my mind. Mission initializing, scanning initiated. Scan complete, comparing with database. Comparison finished. Similarity level, Duskwind Citadel Scholarium 67.3%, Cindermore Scholarium 54.4%, Viridian Hearth Conclave 23.1%. So these three Scholaria have the highest probabilities? I stroked my chin. From the various introductions of the Scholaria, I remember that Cindermore Scholarium specializes in the fire and plant elements, as well as the creation of magic artifacts. Viridian Hearth Conclave is not known for famous shadow and dark element magi either. It seems like the Duskwind Citadel Scholarium is the best choice. They're famous for their specialization in the dark element and are also a pioneer in the research of souls. But this Duskwind Citadel Scholarium, why does the name sound like a cult from my former world? It seems like a shadow and dark element affinity user like me can never get close to the light. After thinking for a while, I still decided to take a look no matter what. At the very least, one cannot hinder their progress based on a name alone. I remember the recruiting area for the Duskwind Citadel Scholarium acolytes. It seems to be on the east side of the camp. I walked for about 10 minutes and finally reached a tent that was constructed with numerous white bones. The words on top were arranged to form. The Duskwind Citadel Scholarium welcomes you. These big words were all written in red and dripping with blood, which scared many of the surrounding acolytes away, and seeing this made me rather speechless. Why would they construct such a scary-looking scene? To frighten people? They could have at least done it after signing the contract. Otherwise, all the acolytes will be scared away. I shook my head and walked into the tent of white bones. As I entered, a cold aura that reeked of blood engulfed me and made my hair stand on end. He. After waiting for long, finally, one comes. Where are you? Who is speaking? I received a shock. Excuse me, you are stepping on my hand. the voice traveling from beneath my feet, which made me jump in fright. Only then did I realize that my shoes were stepping on a withered palm. I hurriedly jumped away. "Sorry, sir." "No worries, but could you move your feet? They are stepping on my right leg now." I then realized that the ground inside the tent was uneven, and there were many dried bones littered about, and earlier I had unsuspectingly stepped on some. As I moved backwards, the few dried bones of hands and legs began to assemble into a skeletal figure. Taking a closer look, there was a faint layer of necroskin on top of this skeleton which had covered the bones, and on the skull where the eyes were, two phosphorescent green lights flickered faintly, which was extremely terrifying. "I'm sorry, sir," I gulped and hurriedly apologized. "No matter." The white bony teeth clacked and produced a human voice. "Let me introduce myself. I am a professor of the shadow and dark elements. You can call me Professor Valerius." "My most respected Sir Professor Valerius, hello." I bowed once again. "You coming here? Does that mean you wish to enter the Duskwind Citadel Scholarium?" The bony white Professor Valerius conjured a black robe from nowhere and concealed its body within it, which soothed my nerves a little. "Before that, I wish to see the rules set by the Duskwind Citadel Scholarium." "All right." Professor Valerius took out a dusty sheet of sheepskin paper from behind and handed it over to me. "According to the ancient agreement, after choosing our Duskwind Citadel Scholarium, you are receiving the right to partake in the basic lessons of the Duskwind Citadel Scholarium, a set of elementary meditation techniques, 5 years of residence, lodging, and food free of charge. We also allow you to use magic crystals as remuneration to exchange for knowledge from the professors." Professor Valerius spoke nonstop while I read rapidly and compared with the information constantly presented by the cognitive core. I discovered that what Professor Valerius said was the exact same as the information on the sheepskin paper. In terms of basic hospitality, it was pretty similar amongst the various scholaria. The feedback from the cognitive core also indicated that although it could not successfully scan the person in front of me, Professor Valerius had unintentionally released a fluctuating arcane radiation, which implied that Professor Valerius's strength was above the 3 archons of light of the traveling party, and this startled me. "I have understood the basic terms now. May I know what kind of payment is needed to enter the Duskwind Citadel Scholarium?" 13 magic crystals, or an item identical in value, Professor Valerius said. "I will use this item to exchange." I made up my mind and withdrew the magus ring hung around my neck. "You seem to have an interesting toy." The green flame in Professor Valerius's eyes flashed. The bony white hand took the ring and placed it in its palm, and then took out an item similar to a magnifying glass and inspected it. It is indeed rather interesting. I haven't seen these patterns in a long time." "A low-grade magic artifact. It looks like it was created in our Duskwind Citadel Scholarium, and there is a carved inscription of a hastening spell formation, but it is broken. It's worth 15 magic crystals." "Now, newbie, are you willing to mortgage this ring for your school fees? Once you have decided, sign the ancient contract of our Duskwind Citadel Scholarium," Professor Valerius said with an accentuated tone. "I accept," my resolute voice sounded. "Good. I hereby declare that the contract is formed," Professor Valerius said. "Hand over your form to me." After receiving my form, Professor Valerius laughed. "Shadow and dark element affinity. No wonder you chose our scholarium. In this stick shore, we are the most outstanding. Since you forked out a greater amount than the fees required, I hereby announce that you have been accepted and won't need an entry test. Take this card. Go back and rest. Tomorrow we will proceed with our journey back to the scholarium." Professor Valerius took out something that resembled a metal card. I received it and saw that a number 9 was written on it. "It is over just like this? Don't we have to sign a contract or something?" I asked casually. "Ha ha ha. Never once was there someone who dared to deceive a magus." Professor Valerius sniggered, and it gave me the chills. "Then I will leave first, sir." I bowed and walked out of the tent. I went to the area behind the Duskwind Citadel Scholarium tent. Behind the recruitment area of these scholaria, there were rows of wooden huts erected, and in the middle, youths of both genders were walking in and out of them. They seemed to be there as the temporary residence for acolytes. "Hey, nice to meet you. Are you new here?" The wooden door that was numbered 6 opened, and an acolyte with red hair and blue eyes walked out from it and greeted me. "Hi, I'm Kalen." I smiled. "Haha, I'm Brendan. As for my family background, it isn't very important since it cannot be used on another continent." Brendan seemed to be very amiable. Come, let me introduce you. Brendan headed towards the various fan-shaped huts. Fellows, we have a new companion. Several acolytes streamed out from the wooden doors and gathered together. I counted a total of 7 or 8 people. Good afternoon. I'm Kalon of the Ashfall Dominion, a 4th grade acolyte. A boy who seemed to have an air of leadership gave a self-introduction. You seem to be pretty late, Kalon said. We met with some troubles along the way, in the Blighted Steppes. I said ambiguously, not wanting to say much. The Blighted Steppes? It is indeed very dangerous. Kalon looked at the acolytes behind him. Let me introduce them. This is Brendan, whom you have met earlier. This is Hauke, a 3rd grade acolyte. A largely built guy scratched his head in embarrassment, looking simple and honest. This is Reese, a 4th grade acolyte. He was a small boy with a skinny build, but there was a tinge of pride in his eyes. This is Garrick, a 2nd grade acolyte. And over there are Neov and Doriana, both 1st grade acolytes. Although Kalon had restrained himself, I could still detect signs of disdain in his words. 1st grade acolyte, 2nd grade acolyte. They could basically only be an acolyte their whole lives, so one couldn't blame him for shunning them. How are you? Garrick forced a smile in greeting. As for Neov and Doriana, they were both little girls, and some baby fat were still on their cheeks. At this point, they glanced downwards. Who was that? I pursed my lips. Beside their small circle was a boy dressed in black, his face pale. Standing at the side, he did not seem to fit in with the rest, and looked rather arrogant. He is Jackson, our genius of this semester, a 5th grade acolyte. Becoming a magus is only a matter of time. Kalon's expression turned sour, and he seemed to have some bitterness in his words. Whoa, a 5th grade acolyte. He has a 90% chance of becoming a magus. No wonder he is so arrogant, I thought, inhaling a breath of cold air, and couldn't help but to give Jackson a few more glances. Humph. As if noticing the crowd looking at him, Jackson silently harumphed and entered his own wooden hut. This wooden hut obviously had a larger surface area, and the adornments were more exquisite. As a 5th grade acolyte, his treatment will be the best. Who knows, there might be some professors looking to take him under their wings early. Kalon's face soured even more. I realized that this group of acolytes was split into a few cliques. The 3rd grade acolytes and 4th grade acolytes were superior to the lower grade acolytes, but rather inferior to Jackson, the 5th grade acolyte. As for the lowest grade acolytes like Garrick, they all stuck together pitifully and formed a clique. And then there was Jackson, who was segregated away from these two groups. Hello everyone, I'm Kalon, and my aptitude is 3rd grade, I said. Welcome, Kalon offered, a slight smile touching his lips. His gaze held an unreadable quality, perhaps assessment, perhaps simple politeness. Garrick, along with Neov and Doriana, seemed to shrink slightly as they muttered their greetings. Their posture, the way their eyes briefly met mine before darting away, spoke volumes. My announced 3rd grade aptitude had registered, shifting the subtle dynamics within the group. With their perfunctory welcomes delivered, they retreated, heads bowed, back into the dim interior of their temporary huts.